Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 321 Plans can't keep up with the changes. The assassination begins. Link was already familiar with this unique killing intent. It was sent by John. Link looked around and finally saw a sneaky figure in a corner. You should quickly help Benjamin maintain order. After Li Zijun left, Link walked towards a corner nonchalantly. He couldn't figure out John's motive for appearing here. Did she come to find him out of the blue, or was she hiding in the Mun Kingdom for something else? Link followed John to a corner and asked, "What are you doing here?" John took off the kitchen assistant's work hat and then pressed the hidden button on his collar. The clothes on his body changed from a kitchen assistant's uniform to a suit like a chameleon. The situation has changed. The energy pillars in the various laboratories were invaded and stolen by hostile forces. The Freedom Federation Summit, which was originally scheduled to be held in Dragon City in August, was brought forward to tomorrow. Alongso will be taking a special plane to Dragon City later to discuss the dangers of the loss of the energy pillar. Link's mind went blank. He finally understood John's plan to assassinate Alongso at the airport before the Freedom Federation Summit. What do we do now? Give up on the assassination? Asked Link. No, the assassination will be brought forward. We'll go now. I learned that Alongso's private plane will take off at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. After this meeting, there won't be any meetings outside for the next 3 months. Also, because of the theft, the security around us will be strengthened. So, this is our only chance? Link asked. John nodded with certainty. This was indeed the only chance to make a move. The airport had the least security personnel and was the easiest to take action. In other places, Alongso was followed by hundreds of special agents and specialized security personnel. In addition, within the scope of Shandu, the army could be mobilized within 5 minutes, which was what gave John the most headache. The best time to strike was when they were boarding at the airport. Lin Ke took a look at the time. It was already 11:30 in the afternoon. There were only 2.5 hours left before Alongso boarded the plane. Time was tight. I'll give you 2 hours to prepare. Meet me at the entrance of the city library at 1:30 p.m. sharp. I only have half an hour. Is that enough time? Link asked, jolted. I'll tell you the plan in the car. Drive at full speed from the library to the airport. It'll take 27 minutes. You have 3 minutes to act. No problem. Link was shocked by John's breathtakingly planned timing. He was the highest-ranking leader of the Sand City, after all. Wasn't it a little disrespectful to take action in just 3 minutes? John seemed to understand Link's surprise. He patted his shoulder and said, "What do you think I've been doing for the past 3 months? With these 3 months of hard work, I dared to set the time to 3 minutes. Okay, see you at 1:30 sharp then." In the blink of an eye, John had already left. Link walked out of the corner and adjusted his coat while sorting out his thoughts. They had thought that they would assassinate Alongso in August. They did not expect the butterfly effect to come so quickly. The theft of the energy pillar was classified as an S-class emergency by the military. After all, this was something that the Freedom Federation government had been collecting and researching for a long time. Previous experiments had even proven that it was related to summoning Inhumans. Now that the energy pillar had been snatched away by the opposing forces of the Freedom Federation, if these fellows were to research and summon the undying mutants, it would definitely be a fatal blow to the Freedom Federation. The meeting that was originally meant to discuss external strategies was forced to be brought forward because of this organized and premeditated theft. If the assassination was successful today, the situation in Shandu would change dramatically. The 4 commanders of the military were holding each other back, and they would definitely agree to send troops to suppress anything that threatened the stability of Shandu. However, due to Link's influence, he would definitely turn a blind eye to the internal strife between the gangs in the slums. Hence, what Link wanted to do was to take advantage of the chaos to devour the 4 major forces. From then on, the slums would only have one name. Since that was the case, it was time for the spies and the three forces to close the net. Because of the sudden departure of the four commanders, the originally lively wedding was suddenly left with only questions. All the people present were uptown influential people, and many of them were from the military. They only knew that all the military forces in shadow were on the move, and it seemed that something big was going to happen. Therefore, even though there was a pig feast to eat, everyone was very excited. Link wasn't in a hurry. He ate slowly, his brain sorting out what he had missed. Link had been preparing for more than 3 months in the Sand City. He was finally taking the first step towards the hidden mission on Wasteland Planet. Mandala's Revenge had a total of 7 targets. Link's first target was the Supreme Commander of the Freedom Federation's Sand Capital. After the wedding, Benjamin still wanted to keep Link for dinner. "Brother Lin, you should stay for the afternoon too. You can leave after dinner. You must be busy on your wedding day," said Link with a smile. "I won't disturb you any longer. Besides, your brother's family and business are big, so he's very busy." Jenny, who was standing at the side, hugged Benjamin's arm and said, "All right, stop being so stubborn. Brother Lin must have something important to do. When the Special Forces is established, you'll have time to gather. Look at Jenny, she's becoming more and more like a good wife and mother. Remember to train the hounds for the next few days to increase their rapport with each other. Don't fail to convince them when the operation unit is set up." Link tried to persuade her. Li Zijun, who was standing at the side, also nodded in agreement. Link left in his car and returned to the Kylin Hall. It was 12:30 am. He still had an hour to prepare and rush to the city library. "Rat Secret Agent, I have an important task for you." Link called over the Rat Secret Service team and handed them the 5 spy rats that he had already written in the information. "Take these 5 spy mice to the 3 major forces to receive them. Make sure the news is delivered on time. This time, Treasure Hunting Mouse won't lead you. You have to complete the mission on your own." The 5 mice straightened their backs and saluted with their little paws next to their heads. Then, they left with the 5 spy mice. Link had assassinated General Alongso. At the same time, it was time for the 3 spies outside to clean up the mess and defect. Link's message was for the 3 to immediately gather their trusted subordinates and launch a sudden rebellion today to deal a fatal blow to the 3 major forces. "Since it's a quick assassination, I can't bring large pets and iconic items. We have to bring them, so we have to make sure that anyone who sees these pets must die." Link was choosing in the zoo. The first was the treasure hunting mouse, his number 1 old partner. His status was equivalent to Little Xi's god Pi, and he would not be shaken by even thunder. Secondly, he had to bring the Silver Army ants and Silver Formation wall ants. Link searched around and finally picked out the rubber python and the illusion vine. Because of its flexible nature, the rubber python could be completely curled up in the backpack, and its rubber body had many uses. The illusionary vine had an extremely strong binding effect in a small space like the plane. In terms of equipment, Link put on the impact power boots made by Dave before, brought 2 pulse signal bombs, put on the holographic human skin mask, and left Kylin Hall quietly with his backpack, heading to the city library. Chapter 322 The Speed of Life and Death, 2 in 1. This time, Link used a human skin mask to create an ordinary-looking face. Link looked in the mirror for a long time after he was done, but he had completely forgotten what the face looked like. However, this was the effect that Link wanted. A face that would not leave any memories in front of the enemy even if he walked around for half a day. Lin K arrived at the library on time and immediately saw a flashy silver sports car with 2 doors. In the driver's seat, John had disheveled hair, a black suit, and sunglasses. He looked extremely cool. Lin K carried his bag on one shoulder and walked straight to the sports car. He opened the door to the passenger's seat and sat down. Link could see the shock on John's face. Before John could speak, he said, "Sir, are you going to the airport?" It suddenly dawned on John. He started the engine and drove directly to Binhe Avenue in the direction of the airport. The sports car with the V12 engine was like a silver bolt of lightning as it sped on the road. The face you've made is so ordinary. If you didn't speak, I would have thought you were a passerby. As John drove, he turned to look at the face that Link had created from time to time. He couldn't believe how Link had created such an unrecognizable face. Link chuckled. It seemed that he had made the right choice. Even the number one assassin on Wasteland Planet, John, could not see through his disguise. It was a powerful effect. Lin Ke looked at his attributes after putting on the mask and realized that his charm had dropped from 12 to 0. There was no charm, nothing special, just like air. Now, tell me your plan. Link opened his bag and stuck one of his arms into it. The fantasy vine slithered into Link's sportswear through his sleeves and wrapped around his waist. As for the rubber python, it was too big, so it was better to stay in his bag. John adjusted his sunglasses. The silver sports car had already driven out of the downtown area and was driving along the highway. Our battle plan is to attack. Link's brows immediately fell. John was getting more and more out of line. Seeing that John had stopped talking, Link's eyes widened in shock. Don't tell me you really don't have a battle plan. John's lips curled up, and he said lazily, "Didn't I tell you, the battle plan is to attack?" Link's heart sank. However, he thought about it carefully. John was the most legendary assassin on Wasteland Planet. How could his assassination plan be so simple? There must have been a lot of research done. Our attack plan isn't to drive straight into the airport, rush onto the plane, and kill Alonso with our hands, is it? Link asked tentatively. John snapped his fingers, and a glint flashed in his eyes. It seems that your comprehension ability is not bad. That's right, this is the entire attack plan. Link's mind went blank. Was this guy joking? But after a while, Link regained his composure. Although John had died before he could live to the official version in his previous life, every aspect of the main storyline on Wasteland Planet was inextricably linked to this guy. Just like the Golden Snake Prince Xia Sui in Blue Blood Sword. The entire chapter had never officially appeared, but his legend was everywhere in the pugilistic world. How could such a cool person come up with such a stupid plan? Lin Ke glanced at his watch. They would arrive at the scheduled airport in 10 minutes. The scenery outside the window changed rapidly. The rows of high-rise buildings in the rearview mirror quickly disappeared and were replaced by tightly packed villages and towns, which formed the culture of the villages and towns at the edge of Shadu. The hills on both sides of the highway gradually turned into the Gobi Desert. The desolate Gobi Desert and the sky blended into one through the light yellow gradient. Are you ready? We'll be there in 3 minutes. After crossing the last hill, the road reached the end of the horizon. The scorching hot air rose from the ground, and the straight road seemed to be dancing on the ground. The scorching sun attacked all the living beings in the desert indiscriminately, and the air was filled with an unbearable heat. Lin Ke checked his watch and took a deep breath. He then looked at John and said, "Get ready. This is the first time I'm fighting alongside the number one assassin on Wasteland Planet, the painter. It's a good opportunity to learn from him." A cigarette suddenly appeared in John's hand. He held it in his mouth casually, lit it with a lighter, and took a big puff. "Then I'm afraid you won't be able to learn much. Assassination techniques are all in the early stages of preparation. As long as they were well prepared, assassinating a target would be easier than eating or drinking. Of course, it's still too early for you to learn it." John rolled down the window a little, and the strong smell of smoke was quickly swept out of the carriage with the turbulent flow of the gap. His messy hair fluttered in the wind, and he had a bit of the carefreeness of a wastrel. With the cigarette in his mouth, the image of a wastrel full of stories came into view. After the last long descent, the car sped up. Link saw that the needle on the dashboard had exceeded 330 and was heading straight for 350. As time passed, they were getting closer and closer to the airport. Link could even see the flat and grand airport with his naked eye, as well as several large planes on the tarmac. A friendly reminder, hold on to the handle. After John finished speaking, he turned on 3 red switches in the central control area. The rear trunk of the silver sports car was folded open, and 2 jet launchers appeared at the back of the sports car. Lin Ke turned his head and saw this scene through the rear window. He immediately had a bad feeling. Gripping the handle at the top of the window, the illusion vine wriggled out of his sleeve and quickly wrapped around Link and the seat, reinforcing it. Lin Ke felt a strong push on his back. His focus shifted between the view in front of the car window and the time in the car as he observed the preparation plan that John had mentioned earlier. This mission involved 2 main storyline missions on Wasteland Planet. John's plan definitely wasn't as sloppy as he made it out to be, so Link had to figure out the details himself. The airport was for both military and civilian use. The air base for fighter jets was not far away. However, the Air Force base was mostly filled with helicopters and fighter jets, and there were many takeoff and landing training tasks every day. Therefore, General Alonso's private plane usually took off from a civilian airport. However, many sentry posts and fences were still set up around the military and civilian airport. The roaring V-12 engine quickly attracted the attention of the soldiers at the airport checkpoint. When they saw a silver sports car speeding over, the soldiers raised the deceleration sign, blew the whistle, and reached out to signal for inspection. However, not only did the sports car not slow down, but the roar of the engine became even stronger, like a provoked lion. The Air Force soldiers began to panic. The soldiers all hid behind the trenches and sentry posts, set up machine guns and submachine guns to intercept. John suddenly turned to look at Link, the corners of his mouth curling up. "Now, enjoy the surprise." John took out a wireless remote control from his pocket and pressed a green button. The asphalt road in front of the trenches gradually began to rise, forming a curve and a slope. Boom! The jet launcher on the back of the silver sports car spewed out a meter-long flame, and Lin Ke was pressed down into his seat by the strong gravity. The sports car was as fast as lightning. It rushed up the slope and jumped up. 2 silver wings extended from the left and right side of the chassis, similar to the wings of an aircraft, maintaining the position of the sports car in the air. The red and blue flames of the jet at the rear were the same as those of a fighter plane. The silver sports car flew in the air. Lin Ke looked at the time and saw that it was 2:28 in the afternoon. There were only 2 minutes left before the plane took off at 2:30. The soldiers in the trenches were dumbfounded when they saw the sports car jump over their heads. "There's such a way to play?" After a moment of shock, the soldiers in the trenches immediately took out their walkie-talkies and shouted, "A sports car is flying into the airport. Please be careful of interception." When the airport reception heard the voice from the walkie-talkie, they were stunned for a moment, then they teased, "Mother Gan, are you so free that you're playing with me? You even flew a sports car into the airport. Why don't you say that the train is flying into the plane?" However, before he finished speaking, the staff at the reception desk saw a silver sports car shuttling through the airport at lightning speed. Its target seemed to be General Alonso's private plane, which was already on the runway and ready to take off. The staff member was scared out of his wits and immediately reported, "Attention guards, attention guards. An unknown vehicle has entered the airport, please intercept it immediately, please intercept it immediately." After the staff member finished speaking, he immediately connected to the private plane's route and said, "An unknown vehicle has been detected behind the plane. Please take off quickly. Please take off quickly." After flying for 70 to 80 meters, the sports car landed on the ground with a loud crash. Wang wang wang. The hand of the tachymeter had reached 12,000 revolutions, and the roar of the engine tore through the quiet airport. Link saw the soldiers running out of the terminal in the distance. They got into the military jeeps and were ready to intercept them. On the runway in the distance, the pilot who received the news decisively chose to accelerate and take off. Bang! Bang! The flames on the rear of the sports car's thrusters gradually disappeared, and 2 sounds of the propulsion fuel being emptied came from the car. John casually flicked off the cigarette butt, opened a cover on the console, and pressed a button. Voila! With the sound of metal clashing, the 2 thrusters and the tail of the car completely disintegrated, leaving it on the runway. Immediately after, Lin Ke felt the car speed up even more after removing the weight. Link was flabbergasted. He saw that the general's private plane had already begun to accelerate on the runway in the distance. There were still about 500 meters between the two, but it was already 2:29 in the afternoon. He couldn't help but ask. The private plane was disturbed and took off early. What do we do now? If they couldn't catch up to the plane, there were already dozens of military jeeps on both sides. The air base was next to them, and it would be difficult for John and Link to kill their way out. John's face was still calm. He glanced at the speed of 380 km per hour on the dashboard and muttered to himself, "It's a commercial runway. The plane is a medium-sized Casanova aircraft with a takeoff speed of 290 km per hour. The pilot must be taking off with full thrust at this speed. It will take 11 seconds at the fastest to take off. We have more than enough time." John suddenly extended his hand. "You brought the Kohler's dagger, right? Give it to me first." Link was stunned. He put away the illusion vine and took out a dagger from behind his waist. "The show is about to start." John pressed a button, and the top of the silver sports car popped out and flew off, quickly shattering on the runway. The wind howled, deafening Link's ears. Their hair was instantly ruffled by the strong wind. "I'll go first. After that, you use the Kale dagger to teleport over. There's a simple wing-type flight suit at my feet. I'll bring it with me when I come." After John finished speaking, he set the car to a constant speed of 400 km per hour, then unbuckled his seat belt, jumped to the front of the car, bent down, and waited for the sports car to continue approaching the plane. The distance between the sports car and the plane was getting closer and closer. 200 meters, 150 meters, 100 meters, 50 meters. Link had already recognized the item on John's glove. It was a rope launcher with a firing range of 100 feet. Even if they were in a high-speed headwind state, they could still successfully hook the plane. However, John didn't make a move. Instead, he was waiting for something. However, the plane was getting faster and faster. It was about to take off. If he didn't do anything now, he wouldn't have the chance. The plane's rear wheel slowly left the ground, and at this moment, John finally made his move. The hooked claws on his arms flew out and firmly grabbed the rear wheel landing gear with a clang. A moment later, he rose into the air. The shrinking device on the hook kept shrinking the wire, just like a roll of a kite. John was soon on the shrinking landing gear. Link sat in the passenger's seat without moving an inch. The jeep that was blocking the way quickly approached, trying to stop the silver sports car. From this distance, Link could clearly see the soldier's nervous and panicked eyes. The next second, Link snapped his fingers and disappeared from the car. All the nearby soldiers were stunned, and they were helpless in the face of a sports car that was about to go out of the track. A moment later, the sports car ran out of the track and rolled over on the sandy Gobi. With a loud explosion, thick smoke rose. "Report, 2 unidentified intruders have boarded the general's private plane." The radio signal entered the plane, and soon the reception desk received a low reply. "It's just 2 rats, hee hee." At this moment, the lift had been completely closed, and the plane could clearly feel the stretching as it tilted. Link looked at the time. It was exactly 2:30 in the afternoon. "So, your plan was to take advantage of Alonso's weakest defense to board the plane before it takes off. This way, the only people we have to deal with are the security forces on the plane. You even took into account the fact that the plane took off earlier after we appeared, right?" Link instantly understood John's entire plan after he flashed onto the plane. In the past, when it came to assassinating Alonso, people's conventional thinking was to break through the layers of defense, kill Alongso before the reinforcements arrived, and escape safely. But now, there would be no reinforcements since the plane was taking off. They only needed to kill all the security guards on the plane and then they could kill Alongso. However, the most crucial part of the entire mission was John's perfect control of time. A second too soon or too late would cause many uncertain situations to happen. He could even read the minds of all his enemies. John sneered, his eyes full of admiration. You've comprehended quite quickly. But don't be too happy yet, the security on the plane is the most difficult to deal with. Chapter 323 Plane Battle, Air Prison, 2 in 1. Link had long heard of Alongso's security guards in his previous life. As one of the most powerful people on Wasteland Planet, Alongso's guards were of extremely high standards. Alongso's guards cannot be underestimated. If you see 3 of them, you'd better circle around them in the plane and try to avoid a head-on confrontation. As John spoke, he handed Link a palm-sized hologram tablet with the information of the important guards. The first one was a mutated human called Hercules. His body was made of metal and could change the shape of his body. He could turn metal into liquid and absorb metal to replenish his energy. He was a very difficult guy to deal with. Note: do not fight in a place rich in metal, as it is easy to exhaust your energy. The second one was called Rock. He was also a mutated human who could petrify his body. Combat notice: do not fight in areas rich in silicon elements. The 2 of them had been famous in his previous life and were known as Alongso's door gods by the vast number of players on Wasteland. In addition to the 2 goalkeepers, there was still one more obstacle to get close to Alongso. Link flipped the tablet and saw the third guard magician. Master Magician was a mutated human who was proficient in psychic illusions. At the same time, he had extraordinary close combat skills. Together with psychic illusions, he formed his own unique killing skills. He was Alongso's most dangerous guard. Battle notice: do not make eye contact with the other party. Always pay attention to avoid falling into illusions. It is best not to get into a conflict with them. This magician was an extremely powerful mutant. In Lin Ji's previous life, he had been called the Illusion God by the players on the forums. He was a level 40 commander level NPC. Now that the 3 strongest guards were on the plane, he could not bypass them if he wanted to kill Alongso. Apart from that, Alongso also had a tactical team that acted as guards. 18 of the members were level 20 elites. They were all equipped with the most high-quality standard equipment in Shandu, and their individual combat ability was extremely strong. There was also a special force made up of 30 high-level soldiers, all of whom were normal NPCs around level 20. These were all the combat forces of Alongso's expedition. After 3 months of preparation, John finally grasped them clearly. It seems that you haven't been idle for the past 3 months. After reading the information, Link tried to recall and found that it was not much different from what he remembered. John then pulled up the blueprint of the entire plane and said to Link, the Casanova mid-sized mech has a total of 3 layers. The middle section of the plane has been modified to include an audio-visual hall, a conference room, a gym, a studio, a lounge, and a restaurant. We'll have to check them one by one later. In the process, we will encounter the enemies on the information card. At that time, I will take the initiative to hold them back while you continue to search deeper and try to kill Alongso. John's plan didn't have many twists and turns. From the beginning to the killing, it was the simplest and most concise method. However, every step calculated the time precisely, like a mechanical watch made of countless fine parts. The running time was exactly the same. With Casanova's flying speed, we only have 15 minutes to finish the battle. If we drag this on for too long, we'll fall into the quagmire of death after jumping off the plane. In such a difficult place, even I can't guarantee that we'll be able to escape safely. John checked his watch after he finished speaking, and his mechanical watch began to count down quickly. The countdown on Lin K's watch also started on time. Link fixed the winged aircraft on his back. This simple, automatic, winged flying device was shaped like a bamboo worm. There was a thin rod in the middle with 3 tentacles extending from each side. It was tightly attached to Link's back and limbs. When he felt the rapid change in altitude and air pressure, it would spread out and cover his back at the appropriate height, creating a high-strength winged flying suit. "All right, let's move out." Link and John moved at the same time. The treasure-hunting mouse stuck its head out of Link's pocket and began to sense the positions of everyone in the cabin. As the treasure-hunting mouse chattered, Link quickly determined the enemy's location and reported it to John in real time. There are a large number of soldiers patrolling all the rooms and corridors on the 2nd floor. They should be the special forces. In addition, there are more than 10 people scattered in the inner corridor of the 2nd floor. Further back, Xiao Bao also sensed an extremely strong metal aura in the video and audio room. As for Boulder and Magician, we can't determine their location yet. John nodded and began to restrain his aura. I have a chi restraining technique. The enemy's infrared thermal imaging and all mental abilities cannot detect my existence. So from now on, you will act alone. Link understood what John meant, but he was still a little upset. Wasn't this clearly mocking his lack of ability? Link then took out something from his pocket. Although I don't know how to restrain my chi, I have this thing. As long as I use it, no one in the entire plane will be able to know my location. Seeing what Link was holding, John's eyes widened in fear. He quickly grabbed Link's hand and said, "Link, there's no need. There's really no need. Let's keep this good thing first. It's a waste to use it to kill Alongso." John watched as Link put the pulse signal bomb back into his bag and heaved a sigh of relief. If this pulse signal bomb was used, all the electronic devices on the plane would fail in an instant. It would only take a few seconds for the plane to fall from its current height to the ground. Link finally felt at ease after hitting John's ego. Link followed the layout shown on the tablet. There was no one on the 3rd floor. There was only the loud buzzing of the plane and the sound of the metal frames due to the turbulence. This is strange. The signal tower should have told the captain that we've boarded the plane, but why is there no one here? The treasure-hunting mouse didn't detect any enemy movements either. Link was confused. Shouldn't the first thing they do when they discover intruders be to surround them? Why did they all act like they were waiting for them to go to the 2nd floor? Link didn't get John's answer. To be more precise, he couldn't see John anymore. Even the treasure-hunting mouse couldn't sense John's presence, so he couldn't be sure if he was around or not. Link went to the bathroom on the 3rd floor. He turned on the tap and released the illusion vine from his clothes. The illusionary vine became active after getting the water, and it began to grow rapidly. In a moment, the entire bathroom was surrounded by the illusionary vines, and any place with a hole had become a paradise for it to breed. Closing the door, Link went up the stairs to the 2nd floor. Link looked at the time. There were 12 minutes and 21 seconds left. "Little treasure, you can hide now." In one hand was the magic box pistol, and in the other was Kolar's flashing dagger. Just as he reached the 2nd floor, he saw a working camera on his right. Lin Ke was taken aback at first. Then, he waved at the camera and adjusted his crumpled clothes. It was full of provocation. General Alongso was wearing a large white bathrobe at the moment. He had just come out of the bath with a glass of red wine in his hand. He saw an ordinary face through the TV. "This person's Kazaya face is really hard to remember. Phil, help me check the identity of the invader." Alongso had been in a high position for decades and had long been used to assassinations everywhere. There were countless capable people and capable generals around him, 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside to protect his safety. Now, he was able to face an assassination and talk and laugh. A moment later, the magician Phil returned to Alongso from the small house next door. He folded his hands and pressed them against his abdomen. He said respectfully, "General, it's blank." Alonso sat on the sofa and looked at the assassin on the monitor who was moving forward carefully. He chuckled and said, "An unknown assassin." In Alonso's view, this kind of unknown assassin sent by an unknown force would probably not even be able to get past the defense of the special forces. The magician Phil chuckled. But this kind of brute force assassination method is quite unique. Although we avoided the reinforcements, it was equivalent to putting ourselves in a prison in the air with nowhere to hide. Fine, I'll just treat it as a little break during the short flight. Link walked up to the second floor. Just as he was about to look out, he heard the treasure-hunting mouse squeaking in his pocket. Leaning against the wall, Link wasn't in a hurry to reveal himself. He knew that the special forces in the corridor were all aiming their guns at him. If he revealed his head, he would be shot full of holes. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Link whistled and started humming. When Link was upstairs, he released the silver army ant, the rubber python, and the invisible killer bee. Although there was no one at the bottom of the plane, it was filled with pipes and wires, which were the most suitable for invasion and expansion. Link knew that the Hercules had the ability to absorb metal. Just in case, he did not let the silver army ants go too far. Who knew if the Hercules would absorb and assimilate his precious ants? Lin K stared at the camera. After a while, the camera made a pop sound and the light stopped flashing. The silver army ants had cut off the wires of the cameras in Link's area. They had also cut off the wires of the surveillance cameras in the corridor. There were quite a few special forces in the corridor. Without using explosives, Link could only use his own abilities to deal with them. However, all of Link's abilities were signature skills. Once Alonso saw them, he would know his identity immediately. Hence, Link had to cut off the monitoring line to prevent his identity from being exposed. Link smiled when he saw the wires cut. It was time. Shua shua shua. 3 arrows flew into the corridor, and a moment later, gunshots were heard, and the corridor was full of fire. Link threw the shining dagger out. The sound of the dagger cutting into flesh could be heard. The next second, Link disappeared from his spot and reappeared in front of one of the members. Link used the enemies in front of him as meat shields and pushed them forward. The whistle arrows danced in the air and Link's figure flashed quickly with the effect of the flicker dagger. You have killed a member of the Special Forces of Shudu, LV-20. You have received 3000 experience points x8. In a short while, the ground was covered in corpses and blood flowed like a river. The 8 Special Forces members were dead. With Link's current attack and damage, he could kill a level 20 enemy with less than 1000 HP in an instant. The Special Forces could not stop Link. Very quickly, all the Special Forces members on the second floor's outer perimeter were annihilated. Not a single one survived. He easily obtained 90,000 experience points. Next up is the Tactical Squad's Elite. As Link walked in, he loaded the magic box pistol with a special type of bullet. Bullets of misfortune, 6 bullets a day. No matter how many you use, or whether you use them or not, 6 pills will be refreshed at midnight the next day. When Link was in the Sand City, he had completed 4/10 of the mission's murderous aura and bad luck. Soon, he would be facing a 18-man tactical team of level 25+, elite. This was definitely a good opportunity to complete the 2 small missions. It was not easy to find so many level 20 and above elites in the Sand City. As long as he completed these 2 small missions on the plane, Link's road to promotion mission would be completed. After that, he would complete his transformation and become a commander-level NPC. He had also successfully created an epic-level skill that belonged to him. Link walked through the outer corridor and quickly came to a cabin door. As long as he opened this door, he would be able to see the inner hall of the plane's second floor. He would be able to see Emperor Alonso very quickly. There were 10 minutes and 58 seconds left. Link took a deep breath and kicked the cabin door open. In the distance, the tactical team was hiding behind cover, all armed with powerful assault rifles. There were also members holding shields to build temporary fortifications. The 18 of them were scattered and divided in an orderly manner. Under the condition that they ensured vision and firing, they were closely connected like an impenetrable wall. If Link rushed in, it would be difficult for him to come out. "Hi, how are you guys?" At Link's command, the cameras in the inner hall stopped working. What followed was a flurry of gunfire that was as dense as a downpour. In the bathroom, Alonso fell into silence when he saw the monitor that had lost its signal and turned into black, white, and grey snowflakes. Before this kid started fighting with the special forces, all the CCTV outside had lost their signal. A minute later, the CCTV of the tactical team in the inner hall clearly captured the guy pushing open the door, and then the signal disappeared. Alonso stared at Phil meaningfully and said, "I take back what I just said. This time, they are not noobs." Phil's relaxed expression was no longer there. He put his 10 fingers together and his palms were in a circle. "General, I have to remind you that there are 2 assassins boarding the plane." Alonso took another sip of red wine and said, "Send a message to Iron and Rock. I think the tactical team might not be able to stop this assassin." Phil closed his eyes and meditated. He wanted to send out the message through telekinesis, but he suddenly opened his eyes and said, "I don't think there's a need. I can feel that the assassin is almost at the fitness center. The Hercules has already locked onto him." Chapter 324 Promoted to Leader, Tianzi Wonqi. Another door appeared in front of Link. The treasure-hunting mouse in his pocket squeaked non-stop. Xiaobao sensed a strong metal aura behind the door. If it weren't for the strong killing intent in the metal aura, treasure-seeking mouse would have rushed in and hugged it. "Little treasure, I know. There's going to be a tough battle later, hide well." Just now, Link had killed the 18-man tactical team by himself. In the process of killing, he had used the magic box pistol and the bullets of misfortune to complete the most difficult promotion missions, Murderous Aura and Bad Luck. Link clicked on the mission details again. Killing or kill 10 elites no lower than level 20, completed. Energy field energy attribute reaches 60 points, completed. Good luck attribute reaches 30 points, completed. Bad luck let 10 elites no lower than level 20 experience bad luck, completed. Geomancy of 5 treasured lands, completed. Witchcraft communicate with 5 souls, completed. Tarot secret technique divination of 5 strangers' identities, completed. Heir of power make Kylan Hall the top gang in Shandu, completed. Wealth reaches 10 million, completed. Fame influence reached 7 points, completed. He had completed all 10 cheer-related missions, and the road to promotion mission was also in a complete state. Link stood in front of the iron door. Before fighting with the Hercules, he decided to level up and see how strong the legendary commander tier was. Link handed in the mission without a second thought, and the system notification followed. You have completed the path of promotion. You have received a leader level template and have learned the A-level exclusive skill Heaven's Sun Gazing at Air. Leader, health points plus 1500, energy points plus 500, strength plus 50, agility plus 50, energy plus 50, increases according to class. Excellent potential, from level 30 onwards, for every level, health points will increase by 100 points, energy points by 20 points. Link was overjoyed when he saw the 2 new abilities. The Elite mode increased 800 HP and 200 stamina, while the effects of the Leader mode doubled. Other than health and energy, there were also some additional attributes based on the class. Normally, the buffs would be based on job classes. For example, pugilists and paladins would all increase strength, while stalkers would increase agility. Mechanics increased intelligence, while Esper and Mystic increased energy. However, Link was a scholar in special professions. He had dabbled in the pugilist, rogue, and occultist professions. Thus, the system determined that Link had completed all 3 professions at the same time, which gave him 50 points each for strength, agility, and energy. With his outstanding potential, Link could finally say goodbye to the player's way of increasing his HP. In the future, he only needed to level up and his HP would increase rapidly. This way, he could use the potential points for more useful things. Link's tears flowed freely. The feeling of the system was simply amazing. It was common to cut the player's leaks, but rare to take advantage of the system. Looking at his health bar, blue bar, and 7-dimensional attributes, Link suddenly felt that his body was filled with power. He was reborn. Link eagerly looked at his A-rank skill, Heaven's Sun Gazing. Heaven Sun's Insight Technique. Heaven Sun's Insight can kill people with a smile. Has inner vision, predicting the weather, checking luck and fortune from 1,000 miles away, seeing through the opponent's chi movement, seeing the changes of heaven, earth, and man. Upon activation, 30 points of energy will be consumed every minute. This was definitely the most mysterious skill introduction Link had ever seen in both his previous life and his current one. The description of the skill was vague, but the clearest one was the 30 energy/min consumption. As for the effects, they were all vague. Link stood where he was and decided to use the Heaven's Insight. He would see the effect for himself. After opening it, Link's eyes widened. What he saw shocked him. Wisps of gas appeared before Link's eyes. He was surrounded by the grey death chi that represented death. Through the iron door, Link even saw a ball of red flames with a murderous aura. The green aura that represented vitality was flowing in the pipe. It was the illusionary vine that was constantly spreading. Link could even see a black pillar of light outside the cabin. It was like a terrifying black hole in the vast universe, sucking in all life. It dawned on Link that this must be the death quagmire John had mentioned. Looking in the opposite direction, a golden light shot up into the sky, representing the wealth of the prosperous Sand City. The clouds in the sky were strange, and the air currents were chaotic. All the invisible air now became tangible and fell into Link's eyes. Link tried to raise his hand. The pink aura that represented luck in the air surrounded his palm like a koi fish waiting to be fed. At the same time, Link received a system notification. You have used Heaven's Sun Gazing at air to gather your luck. Your luck has temporarily increased by 1. You have used Heaven's Sun Gazing at air to gather your luck. Your luck has temporarily increased by 1. Link's eyes brightened, and his lips curled up. He seemed to have understood how to use the Heaven's Insight. Let me see, what else can I add besides luck, Ying Luo? Link quickly glanced at his skill panel and raised his other hand. The grey death chi gathered from the enemies he had killed in the corridor gathered around him like a tide. With each wisp of death chi absorbed, Link's blood rage status would stack up, and the effect would be stronger. This was the new effect that Link had discovered after looking at the skill bar. Apocalypse could only be used to kill enemies in the deterrence state to obtain the aura of the undead and accumulate blood rage status. However, now that Link had learned the Heaven's Sun's Insight, he could skip this step and control and use the death chi for his own use. There were 30 soldiers in the special forces and 18 soldiers in the tactical team. In total, 48 of them had gathered their undead aura on Link. Blood Rage, 48 stacks attack, movement speed and resistance increase by 240% for 10 minutes. Lin Kei's eyes widened as he looked at his status bar. He did not seem to believe the effects of Blood Rage. 48 stacks of Blood Rage had increased his attack, movement speed and resistance by 2.4 times. Link's confidence was instantly boosted. What bullsh** T Hercules, Boulder, and Magician. They were all killed. Link kicked the iron door open. The heavy iron door was sent flying and smashed into the room, creating a hole in the smooth and clean wooden floor of the gym. Iron Man sat on the bench, his whole body was made of metal, and he raised his leg to catch the violent iron door firmly. His t-shirt and sweatpants were full of muscles. If he turned all the metal on his body into meat, he would be a perverted muscular man. Link felt a sense of familiarity when he saw the Hercules. That's right, this was a human-faced version of King Kong. He didn't have a protruding forehead, nor did he have large lips or high cheekbones. With these three, he would be no different from a Vajra. Link regretted not bringing King Kong with him today. Both of them had similar abilities. They were covered in metal and could become stronger by absorbing metal. One was a level 35 elite, while the other was the Buddha ape who had mastered the first form of the Vajra's palm and the Buddha's palm. Link believed that not only would the readers in front of their cell phones be happy to see this man's 1v1 battle in the plain. In Link's eyes, the Hercules body was made of metal. However, with the help of the Son of Heaven's insight, Link could clearly see the flow of the liquid metal in the Hercules body. It was also all over the arteries and capillaries, but now they were carrying metal and not blood. His 5 viscera and 6 organs were all intact, but they had all turned into metal. At the same time, the red killing intent rose from Iron Warrior's body and covered his whole body. The air from the outside world was sucked into his body and turned into killing intent at his heart, which flowed through his whole body. However, the killing intent was the weakest at his neck. Link instantly understood that the neck was the Hercules' weakness. Lin Ke glanced at his watch. There were 9 minutes and 38 seconds left on the countdown. Hurry up, I'm in a hurry. As Lin Ke spoke, the gym CCTV screen turned into static and lost signal. As he had said before, John was like a shadow, like air, without any sound, and did not participate in any battle. Link's strength was shocking. Although he had been trained by John, he had only taught Link an S-level skill, Mirror Man. Link had not used it since boarding the plane. John checked the wounds on the Special Forces members. They were basically all throat cuts and stab wounds on their bodies. However, the wounds on all the corpses seemed to have been polished by something blunt. The originally smooth and direct wounds now looked messy. This was obviously Link's way of using the Silver Army ants to gnaw at the wound and blur the features. As they continued to walk in, the tactical team members were lying on the ground. This time, all of them had some kind of strangulation marks on their bodies, and there were bullet marks on their bodies. There were many holes on the roof, as if something had suddenly jumped down from above. Combined with the strangle marks on the body, John knew that it must have been the work of the illusion vine that Link had brought. John was about to get up and leave, but his eyes were attracted by the bullet hole in one of the bodies. He reached out and touched the edge of the wound. John immediately retracted his hand as if he had been electrocuted, and his expression became extremely serious. This kid has already mastered this kind of power? John sighed with emotion, got up, and walked to the inner hall. The Hercules was very difficult to deal with, especially when it could absorb metal to recover after being injured. In the gym, which was full of metal equipment, it was like bathing in a healing array. Link could hold them back for a while or suppress them for a short time, but as time went on, he would show signs of weakness or let the Hercules replenish his metal. Then he would definitely be in a state of anxiety. John estimated that it was about time for him to go in and finish off the Hercules and continue to push forward. As soon as John pushed open the wooden door, he saw the pure iron gate of the gym not far away being flipped over from the wall. At the same time, John's heart tightened, because he did not sense the aura of any living person in the room. Link didn't die in battle with the Hercules, did he? A trace of nervousness finally appeared on John's face as he rushed into the gym. As soon as he entered the gym, John was stunned by the scene inside. On the ground was a twisted metal body, and the Iron Man's head drooped to the side, separated from the body. Looking at the wound, the metal was pulled and torn. It was not caused by a sharp object, but more like it was forcibly pulled off the body. Even though John had seen a lot of big scenes, he still couldn't help but take a deep breath when he saw the tragic death of Hercules. John had fought with Link before and thought he knew Link's strength. But today's plane assassination, Link's operation had repeatedly refreshed John's outlook on life. Now, with the death of the Hercules in less than 2 minutes, John's outlook on life had completely changed. Where did this kid get such strength from? John asked himself. He couldn't tear off the head of the Hercules. John had been full of confidence before he came. With a strong reinforcement like Link, he was almost certain to beat Alongso. But now, it seemed that without him, Link could kill the entire plane by himself. Rock and Hercules are about the same level of strength, and there's an 80% chance that they won't be able to defeat Link. From what I know, Link's mental power, energy, isn't very high, and he'll definitely be at a disadvantage against a master magician. When that happens, I'll be able to show off in front of him, Ying. John had once invaded Link's brain to teach him Brain Seal. She realized that Link's spiritual energy was not very high. If he were to face the great magician Phil, a mutant who was proficient in psychic illusions and close combat, he would definitely be fooled. As the number of enemies decreased, John's depressed mood gradually eased. As long as he killed Alongso and returned Moro's favor, he would be free of debt and could search for a way to wake Masha with peace of mind. John said as he walked through the messy gym and into the opened door. Connected to the gym was the recording room, where Alongso watched movies on the plane. When John pushed open the door of the recording room, his body was instantly submerged in darkness. There was no light in the room, and he could not sense anyone's aura. But John could smell the traces of an intense battle in the recording room. However, as the top assassin on Wasteland Planet, John quickly adapted to the environment here. He activated his night vision and saw the room clearly. Panchi, one of Alongso's left and right arms, had fallen to the ground. His petrified body was scattered all over the ground and had been completely dismembered. The various wounds on the rock's body were shocking, giving people the feeling that all the joints had been installed with detonators, which had blown the mountain into pieces. Although John had anticipated the outcome, he was still shocked when he saw it for himself. The sky in Shadu is going to change completely. John couldn't help but sigh. With Link's terrifying growth rate and power, who in the Sand City could stop him? John could even imagine the spectacular sight of Link's power expanding rapidly and engulfing the entire Sand City after Alongso's death. Perhaps this battle wasn't just about assassinating the Supreme Commander of Shandu. To Link, this was also a coronation. P.S. The number of words in this chapter is 4,000 plus. So far, all the chapters on the 13th chapter of last month have been completed. Only the manuscript on the 21st has not been returned. Wanjun will try to return it today or tomorrow. Also, regarding Link's latest data, Wanjun will post it in the author's message. This can only be seen on the Kidian reading app. I suggest that everyone come to Kidian to read the original and support Wanjun. Chapter 325 Magic Master Phil, 2 in 1. After Link successfully killed Rock, he had accumulated 50 levels of Blood Rage. The 2.5x enhancement allowed Link to kill anything that stood in his way. Before, Link thought that the Hercules and Rock would be tough opponents. However, ever since he obtained the leader grade template and developed the Heaven's Insight and Apocalypse's Blood Rage effects, Link's strength had increased exponentially. The battle with Iron Strength and Rock was completely one-sided. Link even tore off the Hercules' head so that it could not absorb metal to recover. If nothing goes wrong, there's only one magician left. As long as we get rid of this guy, we'll be able to see Alongso. Link lifted the curtain and continued to the middle of the second floor. According to the holographic tablet map that John had given him before, the meeting room and dining room should be next, and then Alongso's lounge. Link was about to face the most powerful enemy in this battle, the Magician. The Magician was a level 40 boss. It was probably the most powerful enemy Link had encountered since he entered the game. Skilled in illusions, telekinesis, and close combat. In terms of professional restraint, it was extremely effective against Link, who was mainly a pugilist. In his previous life, the players had studied the mutual promotion and restraint between the super systems. For example, pugilists were very powerful in the early stages, but once they encountered Esper players who were good at illusions and telekinesis, they would basically be walking their dogs and killing them randomly. Because pugilist players had very low energy values, when they encountered illusions or psychic attacks constructed by Esper players, they had no room to resist at all. They could only waste their energy in the illusions constructed by the other party, punching the air and exhausting all their energy. On the other hand, mechanics countered Espers, mystics countered mechanics, and pugilists countered mystics, forming a complete closed loop. Of course, this kind of restraint was only a paper probability argument when the strength was the same. In a real fight, different conclusions would be drawn based on props, state, environment, and other factors. Link pulled open the curtains. What followed was an exquisitely decorated wooden corridor. The scene in front of him suddenly reminded him of the second-floor corridor of the Windhowl Castle. There were many framed oil paintings hanging on both sides of the long and narrow corridor, and the exquisiteness of the upper-class society was apparent. However, in Link's eyes, this was full of danger and traps. Under the effects of the Heaven's Insight spell, Link could clearly see that he had entered a controlled aura. The exquisite corridor and framed oil paintings that could be seen with the naked eye revealed their most real appearance under the air sense. The entire corridor was filled with danger, and the gorgeous chandeliers hanging above their heads were actually sharp swords hanging upside down. The framed oil paintings in the corridor were heavy machine guns that were ready to fire. As long as one dared to walk up and take a look, the bullets would mercilessly pour out towards the head. The powerful firepower would definitely overturn the skull, and brain matter and blood would fly everywhere. Link knew that he had already walked into the Master Magician's illusion. Interesting. Link only paused for a moment before walking straight into the illusion. Although everything in front of him was an illusion, this road was real and the only way to the meeting room and the dining room. Even though he knew it was fake, Link had no choice but to walk in. However, Link didn't mind putting on a show. The mechanical watch's hands were moving. Link had 6 minutes and 21 seconds left. In contrast, there was also a swinging clock hanging on the edge of the door at the end of the corridor. The clock was realistic and exquisite, but it was also an illusion. To Link, it was the most dangerous thing in the corridor, because the clock was none other than the magician's eye. It was a huge demonic eye floating in the air. Bright red flames were burning in the demonic eye, and the vertical pupil in the center was extremely demonic. After sensing Link's gaze, it suddenly shrank and stared at Link. The demon eye was like a huge black hole, crazily absorbing the invisible chi in the corridor. Link could feel the magic eye at the end of the corridor getting bigger and bigger. The entire corridor seemed to be shortened infinitely. It was as if he could reach the end with one step. Finally, the trembling pupil of the magic eye was left in front of him. It was as majestic as a mountain, constantly releasing fear and trembling. Link was tiny in front of the magic eye. John walked out of the music hall and appeared behind Link. When John saw that Link's feet were involuntarily moving forward, he was slightly stunned. He had repeatedly reminded him not to make any eye contact with the magician Phil. As expected, Link's ego had inflated after the first 4 battles and he had forgotten what the other had said. He fell into Phil's illusion the moment they met. However, the corners of John's mouth turned up. This was a good opportunity for him. Link had been showing off for so long. Now, it was time for him to show off and enjoy Link's admiration. Just as John was about to take a step forward to make a grand appearance, Link, who was walking stiffly like a zombie, suddenly changed his aura. He broke free from the chaotic illusion like an unstained lotus out of the mud. With a wave of his hand, the delicate picture frame on the wall decayed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Outside the illusion, the machine gun barrels broke into pieces, turning into a pile of scrap metal. The chandeliers in the corridor also fell from the roof one by one, turning into sharp blades that gleamed coldly and plunged into the ground. The next second, a cold light flashed in Link's hand, and a flying knife went straight for the magic eye. "Don't embarrass yourself with such a small trick. Show me your real ability, magician." The demon eye turned into a cloud of black mist and dissipated before the flying daggers could hit it. A pungent smell similar to sulfur floated in the air, which easily reminded people of hell and black magic. The illusion in the corridor faded like the tide. The dismantled and broken machine guns, the cold blades stuck in the floor, the scene in front of him instantly changed from a petty one to a murderous one. Ripples appeared in the space at the end of the corridor, and the figure of the Grand Mage Phil suddenly appeared, his feet suspended in the air. He was dressed in a black magic robe decorated with bright red lines and golden threads. It was graceful and luxurious, but it also had a mysterious aura. Phil's thin face was slightly pale. His 10 fingers were pointed together, and his short flaxen hair made him look like a wise man. The moment they met, Link shot out like an arrow. His speed was so fast that he only left an afterimage in front of the people. Phil's telekinesis floated in the air as he elegantly raised his hand and said, "You're pretty strong, but that's all you can do." A wave of energy rippled from his palm, and the space in the corridor seemed to have frozen. Link felt a strong resistance. The next second, under the effect of the Heaven's Sun's insight, Link saw dozens of compressed spatial barriers that formed a mirror-like separation between him and Phil. Break! Link didn't stop because of the obstacle. Instead, he faced it and showed his fist. The invisible obstacles in the corridor that were condensed by telekinesis were shattered by the fist like glass, making a crisp sound like a silver bottle breaking. "Just this? What else do you have? Show me." This level of defense was completely not enough. After killing the Iron Guards and Boulder, Link's blood rage had stacked up to 50 times. His attack, movement speed, and resistance had all increased by 250%. In addition to his luxurious equipment, his 7th-dimensional attributes were extremely high, and his attack power was comparable to that of the level 40 legendary John. Phil's originally calm face finally showed a trace of seriousness. No wonder this guy could sweep away the people in front of him all the way. Just this tyrannical attack power was enough to make people raise their eyebrows. Phil formed a seal with his hands in front of his chest, and in the next second, the entire corridor began to spin upside down like a kaleidoscope. As Link ran, he suddenly lost strength in his legs. He thought that he had fallen into the illusion again, but with the help of the Heaven's insight, he realized that the real world had been distorted. In his previous life, Link had only heard of Master Magician Phil on the forums. The most famous one was during the early stages of version 2.0's first beta version. He had used illusions to replicate half of Shitu all by himself, making the 20,000 Morglia enemies in the air in the city fight to their wits and courage. He had forcefully exhausted all the enemy's ammunition and supplies, and had taken the first victory against the Demon Forge camp in Shitu without any losses. At this point, the magician Phil became famous and was known as the illusion god of Wasteland Star. Link had heard of Phil's name before, but he had never met him in person. He had never experienced how powerful Phil was either. Everything he knew about Phil was from the players on the forum or from videos uploaded on the internet. Seeing it today, it was difficult to live up to his reputation. He didn't know if it was because he was too strong, or if the plane's narrow environment hindered his performance. The entire corridor began to twist, and Link kept his center of gravity through the spinning spatial flash. On the other hand, Phil raised his other hand, and all the broken machine gun muzzles were summoned to him by Phil's telekinesis, reshaped into sharp throwing knives. "Your throwing knife, here you go." Shua shua shua. The corridor twisted and turned, making it difficult for people to stand still. The cold glint of the throwing knife came straight for the door. Link retaliated with the same number of daggers. However, as soon as the throwing knife was thrown out, a sticky force forced the throwing knife to slow down and stop in the air. It even began to reverse its direction. Phil simply raised his hand and stopped Link's hidden weapon. Right now, not only were the original daggers coming, but even Link's own daggers were also changing sides and stabbing towards him. Whoosh! Link whistled, and 3 whistle arrows flew out from his sleeve. They collided with the flying daggers with a metallic clang. In a moment, all the throwing knives were shattered, and the whistle arrow turned elegantly in the air, counter-attacking toward Phil. Phil saw the arrows flying in the air and immediately used his telekinesis to control them. But in the next second, Phil's expression changed. He found that his psychic power couldn't control the 3 arrows. Link smiled. In the face of the insect bloodline, a low-level power like telekinesis was nothing. It was simply wishful thinking to try to use low-level power to control high-level power. Taking advantage of Phil's dazed state, Link activated the power boots on his feet. The solace of his shoes shot out shock energy, and Link's speed suddenly increased by 50%. Bang bang bang! The invisible barrier formed by the psychic power was completely shattered by Link. He suddenly appeared in front of Phil. John had been hiding in the dark the whole time, and he didn't look very good. Not only had Link stolen his thunder, but when had his strength improved so much? When did this fellow's spirit energy become so strong? He can even break Phil's illusion on his own? John hid in a corner and peeked out to size up Link. This guy was surrounded by a thick aura of death. He looked like a god who had walked out of a slaughterhouse. This level of killing intent was enough to make all the creatures within a radius of tens of kilometers become frightened and fearful. Other than the mysterious mind power, Link's attack power and speed were also unbelievable. Even John would be afraid of such a wild beast's violent attack. It was as fast as lightning, and he could only barely catch a trace of it. Phil's feelings were similar to John's. There was a hint of relief in the shock. Humph, don't you know that my close combat skills aren't any weaker than illusion and telekinesis? How can a brute like you who only knows how to use brute force be weak? Without waiting for Phil to finish, Link took out his flashing dagger and disappeared. The next second, he appeared behind Phil. A series of backstabs, with the support of high luck, directly dealt 5 times the damage. The 50 stacks of blood rage had increased Link's basic attack by 250%. A 5x critical hit at home and a 15% enhancement from his dagger skills had instantly increased the damage to 1879. In addition to a few normal attacks, Phil had lost more than 2500 HP in an instant, and a string of blood beads burst out from his back. You're dead. In the pain, Phil could no longer maintain the air of a master. A huge repulsive force appeared around him and pushed Link away. The walls on both sides of the corridor were also shaken by the huge repulsive force. They were squeezed and twisted into a ball, as if the air had exploded. The corridor was in ruins, and even the plane shook a few times. You have received 197 damage from the psychic explosion of Master Phil, resistance reduced by 498 points. Link looked at the battle log. The original 700 points of damage was reduced to only 200 points due to the 2.5x resistance bonus. To him, it was just a scratch. Link took the opportunity to use detection on Magician Phil. He couldn't help but smile. The magician, even if he was a pugilist, was still an Esper class with only 7,700 health points. After being stabbed by Link, it only had 5,000 plus HP left. According to Link, Phil was only left with a thin layer of health and was in critical danger. Fortunately, John couldn't read minds. If he knew what Link was thinking, he would be completely confused. This kid is too arrogant. Phil took a deep breath. The blood from the wound on his back that had seeped into the pillar instantly solidified and stopped flowing. This wasn't because of Phil's amazing recovery ability, but because he was using his telekinesis to stop the blood from flowing out. Flashing dagger? So your real identity is Yingluo. Phil stared at the dagger in Link's hand. A familiar image suddenly appeared in his mind, and in the next second, his face was filled with shock. P.S. If I'm not wrong, it's going to be the big chapters soon. The big chapters will increase the average subscription faster. Haha. Chapter 326 Mandala's Revenge Alongso's Death, 2 in 1. Your Link from the Kylan Hall. Shocked, Phil tried to use his delusion breaker eyes to see Link's true face. But no matter how hard he scanned, it was still an ordinary face. There was no change. Lin K's heart skipped a beat, and his actor's cells were activated. Everyone on the plane had to die, but Link didn't want to leave any evidence behind just in case. Link climbed up from the ground and shook off the dust and wood on his body. He then looked at the shining dagger in his hand and said, "Then how can you be so sure that I'm not the real Kolar?" Phil sneered. As everyone knows, Kolar was killed in the battle with Link. His body was taken away by the Heavenly King of the East, Tai. Phil was almost done speaking. Looking at Link's plain and mysterious smile, he suddenly had a strange thought. Perhaps this was all a fake death from the very beginning? Lin Kai crossed his arms in front of his chest and took the opportunity to check the time on his watch. There were only 5 minutes and 11 seconds left on the 15-minute countdown. This time, John and I were ordered by the boss to assassinate Alongso. We've been on the throne in Chita for more than 20 years. It's time to abdicate and give up the throne. Link took out the throat crusher without hesitation. He held it in each hand, ready to fire at any moment. Phil's face stiffened as he thought of the other person who had not been sensed. Someone who could avoid his detection was definitely not a good person. They either had special equipment that could block his telekinesis detection or were proficient in hiding. The former #1 assassin of Platinum Hotel, John? I don't believe Moros will pay any price to hire the retired king of assassins. Link shrugged his shoulders and pouted helplessly. He muttered to himself, "It's already like this. Is the famous artist not coming out because he doesn't want the magician to die?" John, who was hiding in the dark, looked helpless. Here's the emoji. This guy didn't invite him when he wanted to show off, and only invited him when he needed proof. So his identity today was just a tool? However, Link was doing this to hide his identity. As the person in charge of the assassination, John had the responsibility to stand up and give Link. John appeared from the corner, his expression cold. Before John could say anything, Master Magician Phil's face turned pale. There was no need to say anything more. John's appearance had already confirmed that Link was right. Kolar alone was already so difficult to deal with, and there was even John watching from behind. It seemed like they were in deep trouble today. "What price did Moros give you?" "We can triple it," Phil said immediately after receiving Alongso's instructions. John shook his head helplessly and said, "I'm sorry, I'm sure General Alongso can't afford this price. After all, I only accepted this mission to return the favor." Phil's heart sank to the bottom. If it was a matter of money, Alongso could indeed spend the money to disappear and buy peace. But now it was a matter of favor, so there was no discussion. Moros must have some skills to make the famous king of assassins owe him a favor. Since that's the case, it looks like we can only fight to the death today. With John's testimony, Phil believed that Moros was the mastermind behind the assassination. Phil's hands had just started to form a seal when Link rushed forward again. As the two of them fought, Phil defended against Link's attacks in close combat while using his psychic power to control the surrounding objects to exert pressure. As for illusions, Link was simply too fast. Phil had to use all his strength to keep up with Link's pace. He didn't even have the chance to look Link in the eye and cast an illusion. In addition, there was also the King of Assassins, who did not make a move and was watching covetously, so Phil could not fully devote himself to the battle. He had to divert some attention to pay attention to the painter's thunderous attack. In this situation, Phil gradually lost his advantage and was suppressed by Link. His body was covered in dagger wounds. Phil's hair was disheveled, and the luxurious black and gold robe on his body had been cut into strips of cloth. His original elegance was no longer there. His eyes were bloodshot, and his expression was ferocious, like a hungry ghost from hell. Phil was having a headache. He had heard of Kolar's name a long time ago. A few years ago, he had killed his way out of the slums and was recruited by Moros to become his personal secretary. In order to reward Kolar, Moros specially ordered his subordinates to create this dagger with runes according to the requirements of the Assassin's Scroll. As the highest executor of Moros' will, Kohler had always appeared as a phantom assassin in people's mouths. But Phil didn't realize until today that this guy's seemingly thin body was actually so resistant, not inferior to the dead Iron Man and Rock. The originally high-spirited magician Phil was restrained in General Alonso's private plane. In the end, he did not even have the chance to release his best large-scale illusion before he was killed by Link. He died aggrievedly. John didn't make a move the whole time. He leaned in the corner of the corridor with his arms crossed, watching Phil, a master of illusion, deal with the situation in a hurry, and finally die from excessive bleeding. John looked at the collapsed magician Phil, his eyes dazed for a moment. 5 years ago, when he had retired, countless young talents in the assassin world had gone crazy looking for him all over the world, hoping to win against him or get his recognition. After defeating many talented geniuses, John said something very arrogant now, "It's still my era." But today, seeing the famous magician Phil being completely crushed and unable to fight back, John actually felt a sense of sympathy. 5 years had passed. She had personally recommended Link to Platinum Hotel and Link had defeated Phil all by himself. Today, Link's entire assassination was in high spirits and clean. She could only watch from the back without any chance to intervene. It seems that a new era has arrived, Suanji. Link stood in front of the corpse and glanced at the system notification. Killing magician Phil had given him 100,000 experience, and the experience in his experience pool had also increased to 130,000. With 1,000,000 experience points in hand, Link was not flustered at all. He even raised his hand to check the time on his watch. Yes, the battle time hasn't exceeded the limit. There are 4 minutes and 4 seconds left. Link was satisfied. He had gotten rid of the strongest magician, Phil, and Alonso was all alone. He couldn't do much. Don't just stand there. Hurry up and search Phil for anything valuable. I'm going to kill Alonso now. After that, we'll jump off the plane and leave. I don't want to exceed the time and fall into the quagmire of death. With that, Link leaped into the door and went straight to Alonso's room. John stood rooted to the ground, unable to react for a long time. In the past, he had always been in charge of assassinations, commanding his deputy. After carrying out missions for so many years, this was the first time he was ordered around like a little brother. John looked at the corridor that had disappeared and sighed helplessly. You still have to admit that you're old. After that, he walked forward and searched the body of magician Phil. After killing magician Phil, Link had once again refreshed the level and duration of Blood Rage. Link kicked the door of the resting room. The heavy protective door collapsed with a muffled sound. The Supreme Commander of the Sand Capital, Jean Alonso, sat calmly on the sofa with his legs crossed. He held a glass of red wine in his hand and sipped it slowly. It was as if the blood flowing like a river outside had nothing to do with him. Alonso glanced at Link. There was nothing special about this plain face, but his battle records were enough to shake the entire sand and leave a deep impression. Alonso's expression did not change even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. He even said with a smile, I can understand why John owes us a favor, but do you have any reason to follow Moros? Moros is a merchant after all. If you stop now, I promise you that you'll be the commander of the Shudu army. You'll be under one person and above tens of thousands of people. No one in the entire Shudu will dare to go against you. It's much better than being a personal secretary in Uptown. At this time, Alonso even thought of instigating a rebellion against Link. It was a pity that Link wasn't the real Kohler. I'm sorry, but I have a reason to kill you. Link then took out a ring from his pocket and put it on his left ring finger. The colorful gemstones on the ring were dazzling. In the center of the ring was a perfectly cut diamond, surrounded by amethyst, sapphires, rubies, and emeralds. They were individual but combined into a hexagonal whole. The carving technique was ingenious and exquisite. Under the intense sunlight shining through the window of the plane, the ring was unusually bright. Its brightness was comparable to that of the stars in the sky and the bright moon. Alongso fell into a daze immediately after he saw the ring. She unconsciously put down her crossed legs and the wine glass in her hand fell on her legs, spilling red wine all over her body without her knowing. The box of memories in his mind was slowly opened. Alongso's eyes were filled with fear as he looked at Link's plain face. It gradually overlapped with the face of the desert prince in his memory. 42 years ago, as the prince's most trusted aides, they betrayed the prince together and divided all the royal wealth when the dark clouds of the nuclear explosion came on the day of reckoning. With great wealth and outstanding personal strength, he had fought for the supreme power and prestige in Shandu and the Freedom Federation, which had been reduced to wasteland. He did not expect that 42 years later, the prince's heir would appear in front of him, wearing the ring that symbolized power and wealth. Alongso was like a dejected ball. He leaned weakly on the sofa, like an old man who was about to die, gasping for breath with difficulty. It seems that you recognize this ring. The corners of Link's mouth curled up slightly. Alongso's fighting spirit gradually disappeared and he fell into a huge shock. Link took the opportunity to cast Detect on Alongso. Name, Jean Alongso. Race, human. Level, level 45+, leader. Status, aristocrat, mayor of Shitu Special City, supreme commander of Shitu Army, standing director of the Free Federation Committee. HP, unknown. Energy, unknown. Evaluation, power over Shadow, Chi over the Federation, iron-blooded commander. In addition to the normal information, Link also saw an abnormal state on Alongso. His fighting spirit had collapsed. Battle intent dissipation. When the target is in a state of battle intent dissipation, their HP, energy, attack, and defense will be reduced by 25%. Alongso was beyond shocked when he found out about Link's true identity. The cycle of karma was full of retribution. 42 years ago, they had killed the desert prince and divided the wealth. Each of them was either rich or powerful. He had thought that this matter would be buried in the long river of history with the abandonment of Howling Castle. Who would have thought that 42 years later, the prince's spokesperson would appear in front of him again wearing the ring that symbolized his identity? This was like the end of fate, giving people a sense of nightmare. Alongso nodded dejectedly. I've dreamed of the prince's revenge countless times. I've broken out in a cold sweat in the middle of the night. It wasn't until these 10 years that I was able to sleep well and have more and more valiant generals under my command. I'm also glad that this part of history will be buried with Howling Castle. I just didn't expect that this day would come. Alongso heaved a long sigh. Suddenly, he raised his head and revealed a creepy smile on his face. So, you're by Moro's side. Have you completely sided with him, or are you saying that you're a coward? Link was expressionless. He gently stroked the surface of the royal ring. He will be accompanying you soon. Upon hearing this, Alongso laughed like a crazy clown. Haha, I'm just being avenged, but he still wants to taste the taste of betrayal. I've won in this regard. Alongso put down his wine glass and sat up straight. The strange smile on his face disappeared. If possible, I wish to die with my eyes open. This way, after you cut off my head and bring it back, I can personally witness Moro's shocked expression when he learned the truth after being betrayed. Link's heart trembled. Alongso was at his wit's end. He did not show any signs of hysteria or resistance. It was as if he had been waiting for this day. He was unusually calm and could even chat and laugh with Link. All right, I agree to your request. If Alongso had insisted on resisting, Link would have had to put in more effort to get rid of him. However, Alongso already knew that he was doomed to die. He simply put away all kinds of attitudes, faced his death, and accepted his death. Such a calm state of mind earned Link's respect. If it wasn't for the hidden main storyline mission on Wasteland Planet that required his death, he would have more wonderful performances in the game in the future. But now, everything could only follow Link's dagger of revenge. Dust to dust. As for the Lord's heroic bearing in his previous life, it would only become a memory for Link. If there's hope, let the name of the desert prince spread throughout the entire desert like the golden kailan. The golden kailan was a type of cactus plant that was abundant in the desert. Alongso did not know that the ordinary avenger in front of him was the boss of Kailan Hall. The flashing dagger disappeared from Link's hand and reappeared in Alongso's chest in the next second. Cutthroat, backstab, deadening, bestowment release Kazaya. After a series of smooth movements, bright red blood splattered on the spot. When John rushed in and saw Alonso's head in Link's hand, his eyes widened, he was dumbfounded. He died just like that. Link did not answer John directly. Instead, he looked at his watch and said, "There's still 3 minutes and 30 seconds left. It's enough time to parachute." Chapter 327 Return to Shandu, Continue to Cause Trouble, 2 in 1. John took a deep breath and stared at Link with a frown. This guy was too pretentious. Even when he was the champion of the wasteland planet, he wasn't this pretentious. Alongso, after all, had the power of Shadu and was an iron-blooded commander. Under the nourishment of power, his personal strength was not weaker than that of the magician Phil. Link had only used 34 seconds to behead his opponent. What was going on? Even if they were a weak special forces team with many people, it took Link more than a minute to clear them up. Could it be that Alongso was not as good as a special forces team? He took another look at Alongso's body and sat calmly on the sofa. Only his head had been cut off and there were signs of him being stabbed by Flash's dagger in his chest. There did not seem to be any signs of a fight at the scene. On the ground was a pool of blood that was still steaming. John investigated the scene and finally came to an absurd conclusion: Alongso had been beheaded by Link while sitting there without fighting back. The king of Shandu was beheaded while sitting on the spot. Even John, who had experienced hundreds of battles, couldn't understand this situation. Could Alongso have been hypnotized by Link? He asked. John thought to himself. Other than this situation, he couldn't think of any other possibility that would cause the current situation. On his way back to the tail of the plane on the 3rd floor, Link carefully checked the long system notification. First, he got 135000 experience points from killing Alongso. The second was that he had successfully completed the first phase of the A-rank chain mission King of Assassins request, mission number 2, Assassinate the King of Shudu. The reward was 500,000 experience, 2 random purple equipment, and 5 random purple materials. But Link wasn't in a hurry to receive it. After all, he was still on the plane and would end up in the wilderness after landing. If there were any large items, he wouldn't be able to take them along the way. At the same time, there was a notification that he had completed one of the stages of the A-rank mission Mandala's Revenge. In the quest to take revenge on the 7 people, Jean Alongso's name had turned grey, indicating that it was completed. You have successfully killed Jean Alongso and performed extremely well in the mission. Killing a key character has a far-reaching and significant impact on Wasteland Planet. Evaluation of this mission, perfect, you will receive 4x the reward. The system immediately gave Link a perfect rating, which was another wave of generous rewards. However, Link did not submit the mission for the same reason. After putting Alongso's head into the can, Link went to the tail of the plane. John also followed in a daze. He still could not believe that Link had killed Alongso in 34 seconds. Now, John's gaze towards Link had changed from the initial look of a promising successor to the look of confusion, vigilance, and strangeness one would have when looking at a monster. Something was wrong. Something was wrong, something was wrong. This kid had been hiding his trump card from the start. John racked his brains but still could not figure out how Link had managed to get rid of Alongso so quickly and calmly. It could only be said that Link was in the atmosphere. Link had killed the King of Shudu and rewritten the history of Shudu. He had also advanced the Wasteland main storyline and the hidden main storyline. He was in a good mood now. With a good start, his plan could be carried out smoothly. If nothing unexpected happened, when the news of Alongso's death was sent back to Shandu, it would definitely cause a great shock. Not only the structure of Shandu, but the structure of the Freedom Federation would also change drastically. Alongso's assassination at the critical moment when the laboratory's energy pillar was stolen would even have a profound impact on the future structure of Wasteland Planet. General Alongso, the supreme leader of Shitu, who had a profound influence on Wasteland from now on, had died. Link could no longer see how Wasteland would develop in the future and whether the plots related to Alongso would still happen. However, Link knew that as long as he was strong enough, he could change the situation and the plot. Compared to the vastness of the universe, the Wasteland Planet was only a drop in the ocean. As long as he had power, he would be able to make full use of the advantage of his foresight, be half a step faster than the plot, and maximize his benefits. All the crew members have been killed by the invisible killer bees and the Silver Army ants. Now that the plane was in autopilot mode, it could fly into Dragon City's airspace according to the amount of fuel. By the time the fighter jet escort fleet enters Dragon City's airspace and finds an abnormality, we'll probably have successfully returned to Shandu. Link calmly analyzed. He then took out the magic box pistol from his waist and aimed at the plane's terminal hub. Throughout the entire assassination operation, apart from the initial planning, driving for half an hour on the day of the assassination, and idling on the plane for 15 minutes, John hadn't taken any action. Everyone on the plane had died. He had become an old tool. Then let's retreat now. I've prepared transportation in advance at the designated location. John then threw a tablet to Link. On the map, there were two flashing golden dots moving quickly, representing their location. There was also a 5-pointed star on the tablet, and the golden light was approaching. This is the designated location. In my estimation, we should be able to finish the battle in about 14 minutes. I didn't expect the actual situation to be so much earlier than expected. We can only wait for a while now. Link grabbed the handle beside him and started firing wildly at the plane's terminal with the magic box pistol. The powerful armor-piercing bullets flew in all directions, and the sound of metal hitting metal echoed in the cabin. Finally, it was covered by the humming sound of the airflow outside the iron sheet and disappeared without a trace. The 11th shot of the magic box pistol would produce a random elemental bullet. The cockpit couldn't withstand the corrosion of so many different types of energy. In the end, the hydraulic pressure of the key hub broke, and the cabin door at the back of the plane opened. A strong thrust suddenly surged out from Link's back, causing turbulence everywhere in the plane. The wind howled. Link held the handle with one hand and studied the tablet with the other. The flashing dot of light was getting closer and closer to the 5-pointed star on the tablet. Link and John exchanged a look and put away their tablets at the same time. They jumped off the plane at a faster speed. Link didn't forget to use the Heaven's Insight in the air. All the air currents thousands of feet in the air solidified in his eyes. He could even control the air currents around him to fly faster. John dove normally, but a moment later, Link swooped down from his side like a cannonball, disappearing into the thick clouds in an instant. Link enjoyed the feeling of controlling his aura. He was like a fish in water in the air, as if he had the world under his control. After passing through the thick clouds, Link took out the tablet and recalibrated his position, locking onto the designated area. Link began to control the airflow around him to slow down. When the altitude and pressure reached the requirements for the suit spread open and fitted tightly to his limbs, creating a support force for Link to glide in the sky. As he soared through the sky, Link could clearly see the huge Black Death quagmire not far away. Even from miles away, Link could feel the deathly stillness and lifeless decay coming from the quagmire. Especially under the vision of the Heaven Sun's insight, a mass of death energy with a diameter of dozens of kilometers shot into the sky as if it was going to penetrate the sky. Link glided through the air. In the face of the death aura from the death quagmire, he was insignificant, like a drop in the ocean. In his previous life, Link had never been to the death swamp. As a gold farming worker, he naturally had to fight on the front line. However, among the thousands of players, there were always some who liked to enjoy the fun of exploration. According to the information revealed by the players after exploration, this death quagmire was basically a swamp and forest, full of miasma. The creatures were mainly swamp wanderers, venomous oozling, and various mutant insects. It was said that in the old era, this place used to be a lush primeval forest. There was a hidden underground military base dedicated to the study of biological viruses in the forest. However, it was attacked by a nuclear bomb on the Day of Reckoning, and all creatures within a radius of dozens of kilometers were killed. The unique terrain and radiation led to the accumulation of dead air and miasma, gradually forming a no-man's land. After that, the radiation and the leaking biological virus caused some shrubs and vines to mutate, gradually forming special biological forms such as the swamp wanderer and the sludge monster. Maybe I can take some time to explore the swamp of death in the future. Link looked at the huge swamp of death in front of him and couldn't help but yearn. It was not a sudden decision. He was considering that in version 2.0, when one entered the universe, a variety of pet structures would be the best guarantee of safety. In addition, version 3.0 of Doomsday Echo was a version that talked about cosmic plagues and viruses, so it was better to study it in advance. Link glanced at the death swamp again before turning around and gliding towards his destination. 5 minutes later, Link was the first to arrive at the marked location. He found the two-wheeled mountain motorcycle that John had prepared in the cave in the jungle. Voila! The sound of leaves rustling could be heard from the forest. John nimbly jumped down from the tree and landed beside Link. I've hidden it so deeply, and you found it so quickly. Link shrugged and said smugly, although it's hidden very well, it's still not enough to hide from me. The treasure-hunting mouse in Link's pocket squeaked and pointed at him, asking for praise. Link patted the treasure-hunting mouse's head, and it finally returned to its pocket, satisfied. This is more like it. Oh, asterisk. Asterisk, oh. To be honest, when Link first landed, he was in the dark and couldn't find the hiding place. Fortunately, the treasure-hunting mouse was with him. There was no metal transportation tool that it could not find. It's not easy to drive in the mountains, so I've prepared 2 motorcycles. When we get out of the forest and reach the Gobi, I'll hide an off-road vehicle there. We'll be able to return to Shandu very quickly. It would be great if every mission in the future has such a perfect preparation and plan, Lin Ke said as he got onto the motorcycle. Link was speaking the truth. The entire assassination process was extremely comfortable. He only dealt with the enemies on the plane. The rest of the preparations and logistics were all arranged by John. It was supposed to be a compliment, but it didn't feel good to John. Ah, no, what does this mean? Was she hinting that he could only be a tool? John fixed the iron box containing Alonso's head to the back seat, and then the sound of 2 motorcycles' hums drifted through the entire forest. 2 hours later, John and Link, who had transferred to a jeep, successfully returned to the Sand Capital. Let's go back to the Kylan Hall first. Give me 5 minutes to prepare. Then, we'll go to Moros to submit the mission. Although John was puzzled, he didn't say anything. He was in a relaxed mood. He had fulfilled his promise to Moros and returned the favor. He did not owe Moros anything. After he was done with this, he could devote himself to helping his wife recover. To avoid unnecessary trouble, I won't go in. Come back quickly. John said to Link. Link jumped over the wall and entered the yard. The first thing he did was return to his study. Link had endured all this while. He had completed the first step of both A-rank missions on Wasteland Planet. He looked at the attractive rewards in the description but couldn't open them. It was like a feather tickling his heart. It itched in his bones. Now that he was back in his study, Link handed in John's mission without a word. You have completed the A-level mission King of Assassins request, Phase 1, Mission Number 2 Assassinate the King of Shudu. You have received 5,000,000 experience points, 1 multi-purpose combat growth suit, 1 elemental ring, and materials such as source ore, magic grass, bloodstone, reckless crystal, and shadow fragment. Link took a look at the materials. They were all rare and precious materials from version 1.0. Looking at the equipment, the multifunctional combat suit was suitable for rapid movement in complex terrain. It integrated grappling hooks, parachutes, and a flight suit. It was light and simple to equip, making it the first choice for killing and plundering in complex terrain. The elemental ring filled the gap in Link's lack of abilities. With this ring and enough energy, Link could cast many elemental spells. Multifunctional combat implant. Rarity, Epic, Purple. Parameters, weight, 2.3 kg, memory metal, super alloy, Trinity integration. Equipment requirements, LV30 and above, strength 70, endurance 70. Attribute bonus, none. Special effect, grappling hook. A powerful grappling hook can be released from the back of the hand, maximum distance of 100 meters. Tightening the grappling hook can drag the user to the grappling hook. Parachute. Open and close. New material parachute, unafraid of extreme temperature, delay of expansion and contraction is 1 second. Flight suit. Lightweight flight suit, can be used with grappling hooks and parachutes to form 3 consecutive small tricks. Note, this equipment can be embedded in other upper body equipment in a modular form. Lin K finished reading the information on the multifunctional combat implant. This equipment did not add any attributes and was purely a support type equipment. Moreover, the equipment could be embedded into other clothes and equipment, turning into a modular form. Link immediately inserted the multifunctional combat implant into his epic nano battlesuit. The two quickly merged into one. There was only a square protrusion on his back to store the parachute. Link then looked at the information on the elemental ring. Elemental magic ring. Rarity, Epic, Purple. Parameters, made of mithril, engraved with secret runes. Equipment requirements, LV30 and above, 100 energy points. Attribute bonus, intelligence plus 30, energy plus 30. Special effect, elemental control randomly releases an arcane, frost, flame, holy, lightning, physical, and poisonous skill, consumption, 50 energy points/time. Spell Calamity increases the effect of a single element by 30%. These two pieces of equipment were both level 30 equipment. Link could not wait to find out what the other hidden main mission, the Revenge of the Mandala, would give him. He wanted to know what the reward for a perfect rating of 4 times would be. Chapter 328 Moros, do you recognize this ring? You have completed the A-level mission Mandala's Revenge where you killed Alongso. System assessment, perfect, reward increased by 4 times. You have received 100000 experience points 40, potential points 2 treasure map fragments, and 1 instance dungeon crystal. That's it? Link was stunned. This was the perfect reward for an A-rank mission. In the end, other than EXP and potential points, there was no equipment or materials. He only got 2 treasure map fragments and a dungeon crystal. This reward is too little. Compared to John's Wasteland Star main storyline mission, the Desert Prince hidden main storyline mission reward is so stingy, Link complained. He looked at his experience pool and saw that it had accumulated 2.93 million experience points. The 7-digit experience points finally cured Link's anxiety. At least before the game was officially released, he would not have to worry about not having enough experience points. 40 potential points. If it was in the past, Link would definitely be excited. However, now that he saw this reward, his eyes would not even stop for a second. Link glanced at the remaining 2 rewards. The treasure map fragment and the dungeon crystal were both epic level purple. Treasure map, 2/6. Quality, purple. Description, goatskin scroll. A complete map of the treasure can be pieced together after collecting 6 pieces. Link looked at the 2 rewarded maps. One was in the lower left corner, and the other was in the upper right corner. They were in opposite directions. According to the system notification, Link knew that there were 6 pieces of the treasure map. He had already obtained 1/3 of it. It was an epic treasure map. If he could collect all the map fragments and find the treasure, it would definitely be a generous reward. Link's spirits were lifted. From the location and name marked on the 2 pieces of the treasure map, it could be seen that this was a map made before the Day of Reckoning. The name of the location on the treasure map was still the name of the old era. Looking at the exquisiteness of the treasure map and the details of the mountains and rivers, coupled with the system's endorsement, one could tell at a glance that this treasure map was not simple. Perhaps I can dig out a big secret from my previous life. After all, none of the thousands of players on Wasteland Planet in his previous life had received a hidden mission from Wasteland Planet. Thus, it was up to Link to find out if there were any hidden stories and secrets behind the hidden missions. The hidden main storyline mission reward was a dungeon crystal. This was something that Link had not expected. Link had known about the dungeon crystal from his previous life. Some core players who had participated in the main or side quests had a chance of obtaining the dungeon crystal if the system's rating was above good after the end of the quest line. The instance dungeon crystal could be understood as a type of teleportation crystal that could quickly arrive at the instance dungeon location. No matter where you were, as long as you touched the instance dungeon crystal, you would be immediately teleported to the instance dungeon entrance, saving a lot of running time. In the later stages of the game, there would often be large forces or guilds collecting a batch of dungeon crystals to earn entrance fees. Link looked at the dungeon crystal in his hand. Instance Dungeon Crystal King of Shit's Fall. Suggested level, level 35 level 45. Instance Dungeon Mode, 40-man large-scale time-limited quest instance dungeon. Plot outline: you received an invitation from the King of Assassins, John, to assassinate Alongso, the Supreme Commander of Shadow. On the day of the operation, you successfully boarded the plane after encountering many obstacles. Now, you are going to face Alongso's elite troops and guards in this air prison. Instance Dungeon Objective: successfully kill the King of Shandu before the plane enters Dragon City territory. Lin K raised his eyebrows. Was he on TV again? The gunfight in the hotel had been determined by the system to be a level 5 to 10 newbie dungeon. The plot to assassinate Alongso on the plane had also been recorded as a dungeon by the system, and it was a level 35 to 45 team dungeon of medium and high difficulty. In version 1.0 Advent of the Saint, the level cap was level 60. For a level 34-45 large-scale time-limited quest dungeon, the system had determined it to be an epic amethyst. There was no doubt about its difficulty, and the storyline would definitely be shocking. This is a good item. When the players come in the future, in the middle of version 1.0, I'll show this item. It'll definitely attract players to enter the dungeon to explore. Link's eyes brightened. First of all, this part of the story had ended, which meant that there were only 2 ways to experience it. One was to find the dungeon entrance in the wilderness, and the other was to enter the city quickly through Link's dungeon crystal. The entrance to the Fall of the Sand King dungeon was either in the airport or in the primitive forest. No matter which one it was still a distance away from Sandu. For players who valued time as money and experience, it was not worth it. Not to mention that it was a 40-man raid. With so many people traveling long distances, the cost was also a big problem. However, now that they only needed to pay a small entrance fee to enjoy the convenient dungeon service in the city, any guild leader with a normal brain would choose to spend money to avoid disaster. Using an instance dungeon crystal can improve the relationship between me and the players, and even develop many players for my use. Link did not have any lofty ideals. He only wanted to help the players in all aspects as much as possible after the game was officially released. He wanted to make them feel at home and use his own actions to tell the players that NPCs also had warmth. After storing the precious materials in the secret room, Link quickly replaced them with a new batch of silver army ants and invisible killer bees. Because the previous batch had participated in the battle on the plain, they were no longer in their best condition. After he was done, Link quickly climbed over the wall and returned to the jeep. "You're done so quickly." John looked at the time. It had only been 5 minutes since Link left. Link adjusted his clothes and said, "Men should be faster." "Oh right, I'll have to trouble you with something later," said Link suddenly. Having repaid the favor, John was in a good mood. He asked, "What is it? Didn't you promise me 20 million in cash on behalf of Moros? I can't receive this money personally. After you receive it for me, help me transport it to Howling Heights in the Weeping Valley outside the city." John understood Link's intentions. He wore the human-skinned mask so that Moros would not recognize him. If he personally took the goods back to the Kylan Hall, his identity would definitely be exposed. "If it's to get rid of the stalkers behind me, I can do it in the city. Why do I have to send the cash so far away?" Link didn't hide anything. Staring at John, he said, "Actually, Howling Heights is my secret base. If you bring the Silver Army ants with you, they won't be hostile to you." As Link spoke, he grabbed a dozen Silver Army ants and handed them to John. "Actually, I've already guessed it ever since you entered the Sand Capital, Howling Heights, which was originally a place for bounty hunters and passers-by to stay, has been rumored to be haunted. Furthermore, the corpses of the Machinery Faith Zealots have been discovered. The Zealots usually don't set foot in Weeping Valley, so they're most likely here in pursuit of something." John took the Silver Army ant with a smile. "Since you've been honest with me, I'll deliver the money on time." The two of them arrived at the Moros building. John rolled down the window and scanned his face. Soon, the security guard at the gate was so scared that his face turned pale. He quickly let them in. The news of John and his other deputies' successful return quickly reached the office on the top floor of the building. Moros hung up the phone and heaved a sigh of relief. He leaned back in his chair and said to his temporary secretary, "Tai, Alonso is finally dead. My biggest problem has finally been solved." Moros, who was usually calm and steady, was now exuding a lively aura. The cage-like pressure that was binding his body immediately dissipated. Although the three kings were in charge of Sidhu in name, Derek was in charge of the underground world and Alonso ruled Sidhu. He was the only one who controlled the economy of Sidhu on the surface, but in fact, he was controlled by Alonso. Due to the lack of his own strength, even economic development had to depend on Alonso's mood. Every year, he had to pay Alonso a large sum of money in the name of supporting the stability of Shitu. Once Alonso died, he could use his identity and status to support Commander Win Leighton and recommend him as the new #1 figure in the military of Shandu, becoming the king behind the scenes of the entire Shandu. 2 minutes later, John brought Link to the office on the top floor. Tai looked at John with admiration. After all, he was a legendary killer. It could be said that all the young men of the present had grown up listening to John's legend. As for John's unremarkable assistant, Tai lost interest after a glance. Tai stepped forward, indicating that they needed to be searched before they could approach. Moros quickly interrupted Tai's rash behavior. "There's no need to check. The world's #1 assassin could complete the task even with a pencil. The inspection was in vain. Besides, these two are honored guests who have helped me solve my greatest problem, so I can't neglect them." Moros stood up to welcome them with a sincere smile. John placed the iron box on the table and opened it. Alonso's head appeared in front of everyone. Moros and Tai were shocked when they saw the head. Although they knew that John's timely return must have been a success, when they saw the head of Alonso, the supreme commander of the Sand Capital, on the table with their own eyes, this sense of reality struck them instantly and made them a little bewildered. There are no survivors on the plane. According to the time, the private plane will reach Dragon City's airspace in an hour and a half. By then, the escort aircraft will notice the abnormality on the plane and inform the people in Shitu. John said in a flat tone. Moros was overjoyed. He quickly said, the #1 assassin has made a move naturally, it can't be fake. Morose circled Alongso's head, which was wide-eyed, in front of him. The two of them served the same master 50 years ago and had been entangled with each other for 42 years in Shandu. They could be said to be the people who knew each other best. Tai, who was standing on the side, was in a daze when he saw the head of the most powerful man in Shandu. At noon, he was still reporting today's urgent news to his boss. The energy pillar in the laboratory in Shandu had been stolen by an extremist organization. The Freedom Federation's emergency meeting was called ahead of schedule, and Alongso would leave Shandu on the same day and fly to Dragon City for a meeting. In the end, Alongso's head appeared in front of them only a few hours later. Tai looked at John in awe. Even though he had retired for 5 years, his culinary skills had been on the decline. He had killed Alongso, the supreme commander of Shandu, in the first battle after his comeback. When the news spread, it would definitely set off a shock in the assassin world. The Shining, Nightmare, and Duke, who were ranked in the top 3 on the assassin list, had risen to the top of the list of gods in 5 years, but their records could not even compare to John's record of killing once he returned. John continued, "Now that Alongso's head is here, the favor I owe you is cleared. Also, there's the 20 million in cash that my deputy requested. Please settle it." The Moros people were in high spirits, and they immediately waved their hands and said, "Tai, help this young man prepare 20 million in cash." Then, he walked to John with a smile and said, "After you mentioned this last time, I prepared 20 million in cash. It's in the building. I'll ask Tai to prepare the cash first and let this little brother go down and check the boxes later." Morose walked to the wine rack and asked, "Let's have a drink to celebrate." "No." John shook his head and refused directly. "You know, I never drink." "Then what about this little brother, would you like a cup?" Moro's attention was on John's assistant. Before Link could reject, Morose had already poured the wine and walked to Link. "This little brother looks unfamiliar. John, why don't you introduce him?" Morose was different from the others who had seen Link's face. He would not look down on Link because of his looks. Instead, he had a good eye for people. He felt that Link's face was a natural talent for assassination. John glanced at the silent Link and thought that he was bored after seeing Moro's arrogance. "This friend of mine took a lot of credit for killing Alongso today." Morose knew that John did not like to exaggerate. Since he said that he had contributed a lot, he was not exaggerating. They then looked at Link with a burning desire for talent. "I don't know where this little brother is working. If you don't mind, you can work for me. You can name your price." Morose was willing to offer a price for John's assistant. Previously, when he had asked John to help assassinate Alongso, John had bluntly said that he needed an assistant. At that time, Morose had asked his secretary Kohler and the 4 kings under him to let John choose. In the end, John did not choose a single one and said that he would find a way. After that, the deputy in front of him asked for 20 million in cash. In John's eyes, not choosing Kohler or the 4 heavenly kings could only mean that this ordinary deputy was stronger. If he could recruit them, he could make up for the loss of Kohler's death. Link smiled and slowly said, "I don't need the price, but I do have a question to ask you." Morose took a sip of his champagne and raised his glass. "You can ask." Link took out the royal ring that symbolized the desert prince from his pocket and put it on his left ring finger. "Do you recognize this ring?" Morose, on the other hand, was dumbfounded the moment Link took out the royal ring. His eyes were filled with fear. P.S. The double monthly votes campaign is here. From 9.28 to 10.7, every day from 2000 hours to 2400 hours, for every 1500 points of tips you receive, you can get 1 chapter of the monthly votes and enjoy the double bonus. How many chapters I can add next month will depend on everyone's efforts. Chapter 329 Bearing Fangs. John, who was standing at the side, glanced at the ring on Link's finger. The ring was made up of 5 different gemstones. There was a diamond in the middle, and it was surrounded by amethyst, sapphire, ruby, and emerald. John had also done many sneaky missions in the early days, so he had a very high appreciation ability. The carving technique of the ring in front of him was superb, and the cutting and selection of gems were all precious. Under the sunlight, the ring was extremely shiny and beautiful. John sharply noticed that Moro's expression was the same as Alonso's wide-eyed expression. Thinking of Link's question, John suddenly felt that there was something interesting about it. "Why do you have this ring?" Moro's voice was hoarse and trembling. It was obvious that he had not recovered from the shock. Link's lips curled up. He rubbed the royal ring and said, "You didn't expect that after 42 years, the Prince of the Desert would come back to seek revenge, did you? Alonso has already paid the price for his betrayal. It's your turn now." Link had thought of this plan to kill 2 birds with 1 stone when he promised John to kill Alonso. After killing Alonso, he would definitely go to see Moro's. When they met, it would be the chance to kill Moro's. Moro's expression gradually softened, but the fear in his eyes was hard to eliminate. After all, this news was too shocking. Link took out the magic pistol and throat cutter from behind and pointed them at Moro's. Moro's took a deep breath and said, "We can sit down and talk about it. The prince has been dead for many years, and his treasures have been divided among the 7 of us. Although I don't know where you got this information from, you won't get any benefits from taking revenge in the name of the prince. Now that Alonso is dead, why don't you and I work together? I'll provide you with manpower and funds to open up your own territory in this huge sand city and be the king." Moro's atmosphere was so cool that even though Link knew it was fake, he still felt his blood boiling. "When the time comes, we'll have the final say in the entire Shandu. I can even get you into the military through my connections. In a few years, you'll be the head of Shandu." Moro's continued to tempt Lin Li and even John. "John, if you're willing, you can return to the Platinum Hotel. In a few years, Derek will definitely pass the throne to you. By then, the entire Sand City will belong to the 3 of us." John was stunned for a moment. The first person he thought of in this situation was his wife Marcia. If he had money, would there be a way to revive Masha? But the next second, when John met Link's eyes, he shuddered. Instead of pursuing a vague solution, it was better to ask Link the Prophet for a solution. Since he knew about him, he would definitely have a way. For example, the new black technology of the machinery faith that he had once advised against soul transfer. John took a deep breath and looked at Moro's, who was pleading for help. "Then let's talk first. I'll go down and check on the cache loading." Moro's felt like he had fallen into an ice cave. John was clearly not getting involved in this matter and drawing a line. Although he had only heard a few words, John had roughly understood the ins and outs of the matter, so after weighing the pros and cons, he chose to withdraw from the dispute between the 2. Furthermore, Moro's had asked him to kill Alonso, and he had already done it. Therefore, there was no need for him to owe him a favor. John left in the elevator and went all the way to the underground parking lot. Tai was leading his men to put bundles of money into transparent boxes. Seeing John, Tai was so nervous that his eyes were trembling. "Why did you personally come to Suanji?" John pointed at the ceiling with a serious expression. "They're discussing something up there and entrusted me to supervise the packing. I'll just drive it away later." Tai looked enlightened. With his boss's personality of cherishing talents, it would be difficult to recruit a king of assassins like John, but it would be much easier to recruit an assistant. Besides, Tai didn't doubt that John had taken the 20 million away. After all, with John's status, he wouldn't lie at all. "There are 10 bundles in this box, which is 2 million yuan. There are a total of 10 boxes here. After you check them and feel that there are no problems, I will arrange for people to box them." As the Heavenly King of the East District, Tai stood beside John like a little fan. Whether it was his words or his eyes, he was as obedient as a quail. No problem, pack it in the box. John used his sharp eyes to check and found no problems. Soon, transparent boxes filled with cash were loaded into the car. John quickly left the Sand City and drove to the Crying Valley, which was designated by Link. At the same time, on the top floor of Moro's building, Link and Moro's conversation reached a stalemate. Who? Moro's felt extremely dejected. He sat on the boss chair and felt extremely discouraged. The representative of the Desert Prince in front of him was unmoved. No matter what kind of temptation he used, the other party would not be moved. Especially since he had already raised the price to 50 million, and the other party didn't even bat an eyelid. Moro's believed that everyone had a price. The bottom line that people talked about was just that they had not reached the price they wanted. In fact, anything could be solved by trading. However, even after he tried his best to persuade him, the deputy in front of him remained unmoved like a statue. Moro's even began to suspect that the man was a machine without desires. Do you know why Alongso's eyes were open before he died? Moro's leaned forward and rested his elbows on the table. He placed his palm on his head and said dejectedly, "They must have found out about your true identity and were beheaded by you in extreme shock, so they didn't have time to close their eyes." Link shook his head. "No, after he found out who I was, he didn't resist at all. He only had one request before he was killed, and that was to let him die with his eyes open. That way, he could see your panicked face." Moro's trembled as if he was terrified. However, Moro's tone suddenly turned serious. "There are many people who want me dead. You're not the first, but you won't be the last." As soon as he finished speaking, Moro's pressed the emergency button under the table. Suddenly, the entire Moro's building rang with a shrill alarm. Moro's boss chair turned around and sank down. Link had long heard of Moro's cunning in his previous life. It was said that Moro's had built his Moro's tower to be impregnable. It could deal with all kinds of emergencies and even avoid nuclear attacks. That was why Link had prepared a backup plan when he was arguing with Moro's. While Moro's was examining Alongso's head, he released a few silver army ants and let them climb onto his body. Although Moro's had escaped from the secret compartment under the boss chair, the treasure-hunting mouse could easily detect his location because of the silver army ant. Squeak! The treasure-hunting mouse showed its little head and showed Link Moro's position. The loud alarm and the red emergency light made an irritating high-frequency noise. Link opened his bag and let out the illusion vine, invisible killer bees, and the rubber python. "All right, it's time for free time." The illusionary vine was slithering around a huge aquarium box in Moro's office. When it came into contact with water, it expanded like soap and grew rapidly. The invisible killer bee disappeared into the exhaust pipe. The rubber python, as its name suggested, had not had enough fun on the plane. It began to play all kinds of snake-like operations, pushing the elevator away and winding around the cable, making the elevator unable to operate normally. Tai, who had heard the alarm and wanted to rush up to see what was going on, was stopped halfway. Link walked to Moro's desk and found the emergency button. He pressed it again, and the disturbing alarm finally stopped. Even the red alarm light stopped. Link glanced at the floor where Moro's had disappeared. He tapped twice with his hand, took a deep breath, and punched. The entire floor of the top floor rumbled, and one could even feel a strong tremor. With one punch, the secret compartment shattered, revealing an elaborate mechanism and secret passage. After entering the secret passage, the treasure-hunting mouse could clearly feel Moro's movements. It kept squeaking to provide Link with information. Link didn't let his guard down. Although this secret passage was used for escape, Moro's would definitely set up some fatal traps to maximize his benefits. Link activated the Heaven's Sun's insight. Soon, all the chi in the dark tunnel appeared before him. Traps, poison, illusions, labyrinths. It was as if he had come to a museum that was full of evil and sinister people. Link dodged all the traps and followed Moro's footsteps. He finally came to the end of the corridor. "Xiao Bao, where is Morose now?" he asked. The treasure-hunting mouse chattered and pointed behind the door at the end of the corridor with its little paw, making a short distance gesture. "So it's behind the door." Treasure-seeking mouse nodded. Knowing Moro's location, Link did not rush to open the door. Instead, he stood there and changed his weapon. Because the treasure-hunting mouse had sniffed that there were a lot of metal components similar to guns behind the door, if they opened the door rashly, they might be shot into a sieve. With Link's current HP, he would be fine even if he was shot at by a round of bullets. However, Morose was one of the 3 kings of the Shitu, a level 45+ leader. He had to at least show some respect. Link put away the throat-crushing dagger. He held the magic box pistol in one hand and wore an elemental ring on the other. This time, Link decided to test the power of the elemental ring. In his previous life, Link had never heard of anyone on Wasteland who had obtained such a good piece of equipment. However, there was a mage trainer player from Pandora called Strong Dragon Soar who wore an elemental ring and shone in the first professional league. That was when the players realized the power of the elemental ring. Link vaguely remembered that the player called the Flying Dragon had triggered the elemental ring's upgrade mission and upgraded the ring from purple to dark purple. Its attributes were almost as good as an orange legendary equipment. Since he had finally obtained such good equipment, how could he not try it out? Of course, the main reason was that Link didn't want to reveal his identity. If he killed Morose with Link's identity, the news that Alonso's head was in the Morose building would spread like wildfire after Moro's death. By then, it would be difficult for Link to wash away the suspicion. He might even expose the third identity of the human-skinned mask. The consequence of this was that Commander Mun, who was loyal to Alonso, would suspect that he was involved in this matter. Not only would he lose a strong military support, but he would also be targeted and hated by the other party, which would be detrimental to the plan to take over Shandu. After Link was ready, he took a deep breath and put his hand on the door handle. The Silver Army ants and the Silver Formation wall ants worked together and quickly bit the metal bolt. He recalled the little ones and kicked open the safety door without a word. The next second, Link saw dozens of armed men in front of him. They raised their guns and pointed their black muzzles at him. Tai stood to the side, glaring at Link as if he wanted to skin him alive. As for Morose, he was sitting on the sofa behind the protective glass far away. He crossed his legs and sneered. His eyes were filled with confidence as if he had seen Link die in front of him. "Fire!" Tai shouted, and the dozens of hatchet men opened fire at the same time. The fierce muzzle flash was like the flash of a star, rising and falling one after another. Link's magic box pistol quickly returned fire. Both the speed and damage of the bullets were far stronger than the thugs. His other hand suddenly opened, and a bolt of lightning immediately jumped out of his palm, going straight to one of the enemies. After the electric light hit the first enemy, it immediately bounced to the second enemy, then the third, and the fourth. The enemy who was hit screamed and fell to the ground, instantly losing his life. In the blink of an eye, 8 enemies were struck by the chain lightning and fell to the ground, smoking. Tai's expression changed drastically as he commanded, "Damn it, it's an electric mutant. Quickly activate the suppression field." Immediately, the entire hall was filled with the heavy sound of heavy machinery twisting and moving. The sound of air being sliced apart rang in everyone's ears. Soon, the energy field had carved out an independent space where Link was. A notification appeared on Link's system interface. "You are in the mutated humans suppression stand. Carbon-based humans have been detected. The suppression stand is ineffective against you." After reading it, Link didn't know where to start. "I'm not a mutated human. Are you trying to show off by making a stand?" "Ha, I just said that there are thousands of people who want to kill me. You will definitely not be the last." Morose stood up and said as he stood behind the transparent Fenrir. Just when everyone thought that Link had nowhere to run, he grinned and said, would you believe me if I said I did it on purpose? Without you leading the way, how would I know that there's a hidden passage full of traps in the Moro's building and so many secret devices? Moro's expression froze when he heard that he had a bad feeling. They saw Link swagger to the edge of the suppression field. He did not stop and walked out directly. How was this possible? P.S. The period of double monthly votes. Please give us monthly votes. In addition, please tip from 20 to 24 o'clock. If you tip 1,500 points during this time, you'll automatically get more monthly tickets. How much you can add next month depends on everyone. In addition, the players will enter the game on the 11th, and the open beta is coming. Chapter 330 The Revenge of the Mandala. The Death of Moros. The suppression stand was bought by Moros from a pharmaceutical company that specialized in mutated humans to restrict all kinds of mutated humans. The field could produce high-frequency radio waves and radiation, which were specifically effective on the genes of the mutated alpha in the mutant's body. So, no matter what type of mutant, once trapped in the suppression field, they would temporarily lose their original superpowers. Even the number 1 assassin on the assassin ranking list, the Shining, could not come out in a short time after entering the suppression field. However, it was this kind of suppression that was extremely effective against the mutated humans and had made many outstanding achievements. It had no effect on Link. Not only was Moros shocked, but Tai and the other bodyguards were also dumbfounded as they watched Link walk out of the restraint so openly. You want to trap me with such a thing? Link was elated. He was not a mutant to begin with, so these things were useless to him. Moros took the initiative to use this move. Wasn't it giving him a chance to show off? Wasn't it a good deal? Link walked out of the suppression field and opened his palm without a word. The elemental ring lit up slightly, and a green gas gushed out from Link's body, spreading in all directions. Poison nova erupted, and the entire hall was instantly covered in a dark green poisonous gas. As the poison came from the elemental ring, Link was automatically immune to the continuous damage of the poison. On the other hand, the minions in the poison started coughing violently, followed by choking whimpers, and finally fell to the ground. Moro's transparent protection room was not affected by the poisonous gas. However, other than the protection room, the rest of the room was covered in poisonous gas. Moros could not see anything. It was as if he was isolated from the world. Moros panicked. He paced around the room frantically and observed his surroundings. However, all he could see was the surging poisonous gas. Then, Moros heard the clanging of metal. The sound appeared and disappeared. A second ago, the voice came from the front, and a few seconds later, the voice came from behind. Moros was like a bird that was startled by the mere twang of a bow, and his nerves were tense. Moros was supposed to be the safest in the protection room. However, he could not see anyone at the moment. The surroundings were filled with a lethal poison gas. He was like a small boat in the middle of a storm. Bang! Bang! There was a loud crash on the protective glass behind him. Moros turned around and saw his subordinate Tai being pressed against the glass. Boss, hurry up and run! Tai's entire head was pressed against the glass, and his words were muffled. However, Moros still managed to understand the words that he said with great difficulty. Bang bang bang! While Moros was still in a daze, rapid gunshots were heard. Tai's head was hit by countless bullets and finally exploded. The bullets pierced through Tai's skull and landed on the protective window, leaving dense cracks on the transparent window. The brain and blood of the explosion stuck to the glass and gradually slid down under the influence of gravity, outlining a weird landscape painting on the glass. Then, Link's plain face appeared in front of Moros with a strange smile. The poisonous gas gradually dissipated, and the ground was filled with dead bodies. There was no one alive. You can't escape. As soon as Link finished speaking, he used the Heaven Sun's insight to absorb all the death chi from the 41 people present, including Tai. He had an additional 41 layers of Blood Rage. Blood Rage, 41 stacks. Your attack, movement speed, and resistance will be increased by 205% for 10 minutes. Lin Ke had regained the feeling of killing everyone on the plane. He really had to thank these people who helped him stack his buffs. Morose was like a messenger who fulfilled his dreams. He allowed Link to experience an exponential increase in power. Link took 2 steps back, clenched his fist, and smashed it against the protective glass. Boom! The entire floor was filled with sound waves, the ground shook, and the protective glass was covered in spider patterns. Moro's mind went blank. His protective glass was extremely strong, and could even withstand the explosion damage of a rocket launcher. But now, it was so easily shaken by Link's punch. A few more punches and the entire protection chamber would collapse. Moro's eyes were filled with fear. He immediately opened a secret passage in the protection room and ran away. Link smirked. Morose was like a turtle in a jar to him. It was a good opportunity for Morose to show him the hidden traps in the building through the game of cat and mouse. Another punch was thrown, and the glass of the protection room was instantly shattered into pieces. Just as Link was about to go into the secret passage, another door opened. The hatchet men rushed into the room, screaming. Instantly, gunshots were heard. Link hid behind cover and listened to the storm of bullets outside. He sneered, "They're just tools to stack buffs." Half a minute later, the 30 bodyguards fell to the ground. The grey death energy was absorbed by Link again, and his blood fury status reached an unprecedented level of 71. Xiaobao, help me sense where Morose is. Frowning, the treasure-hunting mouse closed its eyes and began to sense the movement of the metals. After a few seconds, it suddenly opened its eyes and began to gesture with its little claws. It stretched out 2 fingers on one hand and swung them back and forth alternately. Then, it seemed to be holding something with its claws, shaking it up and down. "Are you saying that he's already in the underground parking lot?" asked Link, suddenly enlightened. Lil Bao gave Link a thumbs up, praising Link's understanding. Link stood up and sighed. "I was going to let Morose take me for a walk around the building. I didn't expect him to run away in a car." Link closed his eyes and sensed the position of the rubber python. He then used his bloodline control to signal for it to return. He then whistled, summoning all the silver army ants and invisible killer bees. "I've hidden it in my pocket. I'll bring you out for an extreme skydiving." Link fiddled with Xiao Bao's furry little head and ran towards the window. At the same time, he kept shooting at the glass with the magic box pistol. The glass of the building cracked like a silver bottle, and then the turbulent airflow in the high sky swept across the face. Link jumped out of the broken window and immediately saw an extremely fast car rushing out of the underground garage of Morose building. Link was confused. Why didn't Morose wait in the building for help? Why did he rush out? According to his understanding of Morose in his previous life, this building was impregnable and could withstand all kinds of assassination and attacks. If Morose was determined to play hide-and-seek in the building, he could still play for a long time. When the other generals of the 4 heavenly kings returned, there would still be a fight. Now that he had suddenly charged out, it was hard to understand. Was there a safer place than the Morose Tower? Link dived down quickly. Soon, the glass in the middle of the building shattered. A giant python flew out and wrapped around Link's waist. The rubber python finally felt comfortable after killing its way from the top of the building to the bottom. As he rapidly descended, the air current flowed into his mouth, causing him to blow his tongue and slap his cheeks. The rubber python curled up around Link's waist. This time, it was really "I'm too long, so I can only coil around my waist." Link pulled open the parachute on his back and adjusted the direction of the car. Then, he closed the parachute and used gravity to descend quickly. After a second of cooling, he opened the parachute again. He used this method to close the distance between Morose and the car while maintaining the height. There were few obstacles when gliding in the sky, but the car could only drive on the road. Moreover, it happened to be after work, so the road was starting to get crowded. Not long after, Link was above Moro's car. He used the hook to nail it to the top of the car. The hook went through the roof and into the driver's seat. Lin Ke put away the parachute and retracted the hook to bring him to the roof of the car. Thump! The sound of Link landing on the roof of the car reverberated in the cockpit. Not only did Moroz hear it, but he also felt a heavy blow to his heart. At that moment, a black shadow followed the car's shadow and entered the car like a stream of water. Then, a person dressed in black ninja clothes, only revealing a pair of eyes, appeared in the front passenger seat. "Boss, I'm late, please forgive me." Moroz, who was driving, saw the man in black and asked, "Where are the others?" "The 3 of them are still on the way, they'll be here soon." Upon hearing this, Moroz heaved a sigh of relief. At least he could get rid of this god of plague temporarily. Link tore off the roof with his bare hands. The iron sheet was as fragile as paper in his hands. But immediately, Link saw another person in the passenger seat. "Shadow, how are you?" Link's lips curled up as he greeted the ninja. Moroz had Kohler, his secret secretary, and the 4 famous kings. And the shadow in front of him was the one who sat in the center of the 4 heavenly kings. Moroz had divided the entire city into 5 regions: north, south, east, west, and central. Each region was guarded by his 5 most capable subordinates. Usually, they were only in charge of regional affairs. Only in emergencies would the 4 heavenly kings be gathered together. The so-called 4 great heavenly kings were the shadows in the middle. They were the Eastern region Heavenly King Tai Yi, Western region Heavenly King Huang Chuan, Northern region Heavenly King Kuang Shi, and Southern region Heavenly King Constellation. All 5 of them had strong personal styles, and their identities were easily recognized. The shadow was just like his name, and he was like a shadow. He was proficient in the ghostly shadow technique, and he wrapped himself in a black coat, as if he had crawled out of oil. Tai, the heavenly king of the eastern region, pursued the upper-class circle, self-proclaimed art connoisseur, and was obsessed with music and opera. He was the one who dressed the most pretentiously. The king of the western region, Huang Chuan, had a cold personality and killed people like they were numb to it. He was an ice-type mutant and could be felt within 100 meters. The heavenly king Kuang Shi of the northern region had long golden hair and was as wild as a lion. He was bold and had a violent personality. The heavenly king constellation of the southern area was refined and often wore a star-mapped daoist robe. He had studied astrology divination and had an extraordinary aura with his star-picking technique. As for the 4 heavenly kings in name, there were actually 5 of them. Did such common sense need to be explained? "Boss, leave this person to me." The moment the shadow finished speaking, it transformed into a ball of black shadow and filled up the gap in the roof of the car, separating Link and Moroz again. The next second, the shadow on top of the car opened its black mouth, wanting to swallow Link whole. Link didn't dodge. He punched out, and all the energy disappeared like a clay ox entering the sea. Not only was the black shadow not broken, but it even fell out of the car with Link. The traffic on the road was heavy. The battle between Link and the shadow had already caused chaos. The people nearby had already run out of their cars and fled in all directions, while the cars in line behind them kept honking to urge them to hurry. Although he had heard of the shadow's name in his previous life and knew that his skills were strange, it still felt different to experience it for himself. The black shadow on the ground gradually returned to its human form. The next second, the shadow vomited a mouthful of blood and knelt on one knee. What a powerful attack! It can actually break through the defense threshold of the ghostly shadow technique. The black shadow turned around and saw that his boss had already driven far away. He was relieved. Link pursed his lips. He had thought that the ghostly shadow technique was something powerful, but it was broken with a single punch. With a glance of detection, the shadow's HP was extremely low even though it had practiced such an extreme move. Just now, his punch had actually knocked down 1/3 of them. Just this? The Black Shadow was extremely anxious. Netherworld, Mad Lion, and Star Constellation should have arrived by now, but why hadn't they appeared yet? If you don't have any other trump cards, then your operation this time is over, hehe. 10 minutes later, Link found Moro's car at the entrance of the dark alley. I can't believe Moros would lower himself to a place like this to seek protection, said Link. Link pressed the back of his hand against the hood of the car. Moros had just arrived, and he could feel the heat from the car. There was no need to use the treasure-hunting mouse and the silver army ants to enter the black market. Link saw that everyone in the black market was looking in one direction. Following their gazes, Link saw Moro's back as he fled in panic. Bang bang bang! Link raised his gun and fired wildly at Moro's. The bullets landed on Moro's back and blood bloomed. Everyone in the black market was shocked by the long-lost gunshot 1 second ago. Moro's, one of the 3 kings of Shitu, had arrived. He turned around and saw an ordinary-looking face shooting at Moro's. Buzz! Everyone's mind went blank. They were completely stunned. Someone actually dared to open fire in the underground black market, and the person who killed was the economic emperor of Shandu, Moros. Moros, who had been shot, rushed to the gun stall and fired back at Link with an assault rifle. At the same time, he laughed wildly and said, "You're finished. You're finished. If you shoot in the underground black market, Derek will not let you off. The Platinum Hotel will not let you off either. From today onwards, you will receive the highest level of arrest warrant, until you are killed." "You think I'll stop just because you're hiding in the black market?" Link sneered. "I'll definitely take your life today. I said it. It doesn't matter who it is.